Greetings, parish orphans and retrogrades. Conclave Day is here. It's Wednesday, May the 7th, year of our Lord, AD 2025. We've awaited this day for longer than just 2 weeks. Who will be Pope number 267 in the Roman Catholic Church? This morning, as reported by my friend Diane Montaigne, we had the Mass for the election of a Pope, pro elegendo pontifice, in St. Peter's Basilica, where the Dean of the College of Cardinals, Cardinal Battista Re, reminded the cardinal electors of Pope John Paul II's, quote, hope that during the hours of voting on this weighty decision, Michelangelo's looming image of Jesus the judge would remind everyone of the greatness of the responsibility of placing the supreme keys in the correct hands. End quote. The cardinals entered the Sistine Chapel this afternoon in Rome at approximately 4:30 p.m. Rome time. So they did not lock themselves away until only 2.25 hours ago, not quite 2.5 hours ago. There will only be one scrutiny today. That is only one vote today. Smoke will be expected around 7:15 p.m. local time. I have a man on the street for that decision, our first verdict from the first scrutiny. Don't expect this to be a 2/3 vote in favor of any one candidate who will become Pope. That's never happened in modern history, that the first scrutiny yielded a Pope. My man on the street is Mr. George Farmer himself. He'll be in front of St. Peter's, and we'll bring him on in about 10 minutes, and we'll
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully the tech works, because he's just going live from his phone. Mr. George Farmer.
Please be kind with me if this doesn't work, everybody.
Yeah, please. Please
for my poor aching heart. Like, I'm quite nervous to patch somebody in from Rome. So please be kind.
Technological limitations being the rule of the day. We're just hoping for the best. But it's Lord George Farmer. And that should be interesting to have a Lord reporting on, like a Vaticanista, as a man on the streets. Now, I want to read to you the beginning of this address, the sermon by Cardinal Battista Re. He said, "We read in the Acts of the Apostles that after Christ's ascension into heaven, and while waiting for Pentecost, all were united in persevering in prayer together with Mary, the mother of Jesus," citing Acts, 1st chapter, verse 14. "This is precisely what we were doing a few hours before the beginning of the conclave, under the gaze of Our Lady beside the altar in this basilica which rises above the tomb of the Apostle Peter. We feel united with the entire people of God in their sense of faith, love for the Pope, and confident expectation. We are here to invoke the help of the Holy Spirit, to implore his light and strength so that the Pope elected may be he whom the Church and humanity need at this difficult and complex turning point in history." Sounds a little bit like Cardinal Burke, but citing altogether different context for the self-same difficulty being cited. You know, it's a sense-reference dichotomy in philosophy. Cardinal Burke means the opposite kind of difficulty. Cardinal Re means, modernism should win out. To pray by invoking the Holy Spirit is the only right and proper attitude to take as the cardinal electors prepare to undertake an act of the highest human and ecclesial responsibility, and to make a choice of exceptional importance. This is a human act for which every personal consideration must be set aside. Yeah, right. Keeping in mind and heart only the God of Jesus Christ and the good of the Church and of humanity.
Oh, wait, let me see. I think we lost George again. Well, I think he'll rejoin.
Okay, George was in.
Yeah, he was in briefly, but we'll see if we can
get that. Let's see how our George cam works.
George Cam.
In the gospel that has been proclaimed, words resound that bring us to the heart of the supreme message and testament of Jesus. If we get him back, just interrupt me, Steffi.
Okay.
Delivered to his apostles on the evening of the Last Supper in the upper room. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you, as if to clarify this, as I have loved you, and to indicate how far our love must go. Jesus goes on to say, no one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. No greater love hath he. And let's see the rest of the homily. Oh, wow, this is a long one. So that's the beginning of the homily. We'll get back to it if we can. I want to also walk through.
We made a conclave pool also for everybody, just for a fun thing. We'll show that at the end.
George says it's pretty hectic. We'll see.
Okay.
So, yeah, we have the conclave pool. We're making this eventuality as fun as we can, because that's what you do. You have to accentuate the positive. And, a lot of people have high hopes for Cardinal Pizzaballa, Cardinal Sarah, but, I don't know. I might not share in their optimism, but I share in the notion that you always have to accentuate the positive. So George is reporting that it's hectic there. He was, I guess, in for a second. I was reading the first part of today's sermon by College of Cardinals Cardinal Dean, Cardinal Batista Ray. I want to talk about the expectation of the conclave length by going through all of the last 11 pontificate conclave durations. But I'm just waiting. I don't want to freeze George out if he's there. We'll go through the.
I'll let you know once if he joins in.
The 1878 conclave was 3 scrutinies over the course of 3 days. They did it slightly different than that. Yielded one of my very favorites, Pope Leo XIII. The 1903 conclave was 7 scrutinies over 5 days. See, they're doing it differently then. 7 scrutinies over 5 days. That was extra slow because of the so-called Habsburg veto. We're friends on this channel with Edward Habsburg, and his family slowed that one up with the Habsburg veto in 1903. In 1914, which yielded Benedict XV, that was 10 scrutinies over the course of 4 days. The 1922 veto, which was Pius XI, ultimately yielded as Pope. 14 scrutinies over the course of 5 days. That's, I think, the longest one out of these 11 conclave lengths. 1939 was 3 scrutinies over the course of 2 days. That yielded Pope Pius XII. In 1958, which ultimately yielded John the 23rd, a short 5-year pontificate, the conclave lasted 11 scrutinies over the course of 4 days. 5 short years later, Paul VI, one of the liberalist popes we ever had, maybe the liberalist at that point, says connecting, dropping back, too many people. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of people trying to do what we're doing, I guess.
Yeah. You almost went. Did you tell people that you were close. Thinking about it? You're like, oh, I'm very close to going.
I was close to going.
Last minute trip to Rome.
Yeah. So was George on for a short while?
He was, but I could tell he was. I could tell from what I could see from him. There was a lot going on. Yeah. Thank you, George.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for trying. Yeah. So that 1963 Paul VI yielding conclave was 6 scrutinies over the course of 3 days, and Paul VI had a pontificate that did last 15 years. I always forget it lasted that long. 1978, which yielded John Paul I a 33-day pontificate. He was almost definitely killed by the mob. That's beyond really speculation.
Wow.
And that was because he was, allegedly because he was producing publicly that list of Freemason cardinals in the cardinalate. That famous list that many have spoken of. Even Godfather 3 references the short 1978 pontificate of John Paul I. That was only 4 scrutinies over the course of 2 days. Also in 1978 pontificate, 33 days later, plus change, was the JP2 pontificate. 8 scrutinies over the course of 3 days. Remember, John Paul I and II took their names for the previous 2 popes, if you didn't know. That's how we get this John Paul tradition. Lots of Catholic kids are named after John Paul II. That's for John the 23rd and Paul VI. That was an 8 scrutiny conclave over the course of 3 days. 2005, which gave us the eventuality of Cardinal Ratzinger. All the lefties were trying to avoid it. Read about it in this great book. I started rereading it. Everyone knew we were going to have a Ratzinger pontificate, especially the lefties who tried to avoid it. They formed a mafia club. They illegally canvassed Bergoglio in 2005 and had planned out what they were going to do at the 2005 conclave for 9 years, meeting in St. Gallen, Switzerland. Well, after all those efforts, it was only a 2-day conclave with merely 4 scrutinies to elect Ratzinger. But there seems to have been some skullduggery there in between the lunchtime 3rd and 4th scrutinies. We had some sort of interesting meeting between Cardinal Martini and Cardinal Ratzinger, after which they broke. They took the 4th scrutiny, and all of the St. Gallen Mafia votes went to him.
All right, George is in. Let me add him.
Hello,
Thank you,
George.
Let me show you. Let me add him to stage. There he is.
Can you hear us, George?
I can hear you great, guys. How are you?
Oh, so well. So well. How are you? Can you hear us, brother man?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Peter's over my left shoulder. I can hear you.
Perfect. That's so good. Yeah, when you were saying not connecting, I'm like, I knew there would be so many people there. What's the mood like?
I mean, generally, it's difficult to distinguish between the tourists and the people who are actually here for the conclave, but everyone's kind of trepidatious, I guess, right now, just kind of waiting for the first vote. You know, everyone's expecting, obviously, in the next half an hour. But I think, honestly, it's going to take a bit longer than that, just because of the fact that there are 133 cardinals voting, and it took them an awful long time to do the oath. And so I'd be surprised if they got out before 7:30. So we'll see what happens. But it seems to be pretty well attended. You know, St. Peter's Square is absolutely packed. And there's a lot of people sort of nervously waiting, I would say.
Interesting. You said trepidatious. Is it a kind of optimistic trepidation, or we don't have the equipment to measure what kind of trepidation?
We don't have the equipment to measure right now. I mean, yeah, talking to people here, obviously confirmation bias on my team, because, you know, I'm not in the Paraline camp of wanting a Zuppi or a Cardinal Paraline to become the next Holy Father. But I would say there's cautious optimism amongst traditionalists over here. There seems to be quite a bit of good news coming out. Just people saying like they want unity, which I think is one of the code words that seems to be the conservative talking point this time around. And there seem to be quite a few cardinals who obviously just don't know the lay of the land, but I think they're going to be falling in the kind of centrist camp, and they might be more inclined to lean conservative over time, hopefully.
There was a move over the last 2 weeks to characterize leftists as centrist. You saw it with Paraline. We saw it with Cardinal Turkson. And I don't think that bodes well. And I'm not really a gloomy guy, but I feel gloomy about the results. What do you think about that sort of shift? It's a rightward shift to accomplish a leftward ramification. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's something that I've heard in the last couple of days as well from a lot of people, is that there's been this sort of recapturing of minds by people who are on the progressive wing of the church, saying that they've actually always been centrists, and they're actually, they want to be much more middlemen, and they just want to be administrators and, make the church move forward in unity and all this kind of stuff, when actually the cardinals who are behind it are obviously far more on the progressive wing, far more, kind of negatively inclined towards the traditional movement. That is concerning. I'd say that's definitely something which has been concerning. One hopes it hasn't sort of captured the minds of those cardinals for whom most of them will be this will be their first conclave, obviously, and they obviously don't know each other as well. So I hope that it hasn't kind of captured their minds and that they think that these progressive cardinals are actually going to be much more centrist than they are. But there's a steady, from what I can tell, there seems to be a very steady conservative bloc, which you're looking at kind of, 40 cardinals, sort of 30, 40 cardinals in that range, who are going to be more on the conservative wing. And that's not quite enough. You need 45, obviously, to block, because it's 89 to win. So if you can get 45 conservative cardinals to just block any of the more progressive candidates, one hopes that there might be an opportunity to then field somebody who's either going to be centrist or more on our side.
Interesting. By the way, George, you're in Rome, so they say when you have a new baby, auguri, and you're supposed to say in bocca di lupo. You're supposed to say in the mouth of the wolf, which I guess is good to Romans. Yeah, because of Remus and Romulus.
My new baby is also called. He's also called Roman. So how appropriate.
Romulus.
That I'm here.
Romulus Farmer. Yeah. No, Roman Michael Farmer. Congratulations, my brother.
Thanks very much. It's kind.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Hope the whole fam is doing well back stateside. I wanted to be out there with you, but I ended up deciding not to. George, if you don't mind, make heads or tails of this for me. 2 days ago, 1 Peter 5 reported that only at that time, moments ago, several cardinals had been seen entering Cardinal Burke's apartment on the Via della Conciliazione. The princes of the church are not yet locked in the Sistine Chapel, of course, but the conclave has definitely begun. To me, that smacks of the kind of optimism that I'm seeing out of conservatives and traditionalists that I just don't share in. I wrote to Cardinal Burke, hey, could you do a conclave before the conclave, a la AD 1130? I don't think that's happening. What do you make of the cardinals being seen outside of Cardinal Burke's place?
I mean, that specific, there's been so many things that I've heard which have been quite positive, just in terms of cardinals having good discussions amongst themselves. The conservative voting bloc, from what I can tell, is bigger than I thought it would be, which is great news. I don't think there's going to be a conclave outside of the conclave, if I'm honest. It's obviously interesting to see Archbishop Vigano's take that the conclave itself is invalid just because there's more cardinal electors than have previously been permitted. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's 133 voting, and there's supposed to be 120. Mm-hmm. But I think there's been some pretty good meetings from what I can tell. The concern, I think, is just the lack of knowledge of each cardinal. You've obviously read this. I'm sure you saw this the other day, but the other day, the New York Times, I think it was, who reported that, Cardinal Arborelius, who's from Sweden, said that the cardinal from Mali just got lost, and then the cardinal from Laos, turned up for half a morning, then walked off, couldn't find his way back to the congregation. That's not exactly inspiring a lot of hope in terms of just people getting to know each other. They were walking around with name tags on because they didn't know each other.
Pokemon Go. He was playing Pokemon Go, right?
Look, when you're traveling overseas, you've got to catch them all,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that kind of stuff obviously is not that inspiring either, from the perspective of these are the princes of the church who are supposed to be governing, Christ's church. But also from the perspective of just saying, how are you guys possibly going to know how to vote for the right people if you don't even know whether the general congregation is or who everyone else is? Which is also why I think, and this is another kind of long debated topic over here, is how long is this going to take? Is this going to be, I think there's kind of two scenarios I can see. Is either going to be a 1 to 2 to 3 vote, straight out the door where someone comes very strong, it's going to be Parler, and it could be Sarah, or it's going to be something like John Paul II, 11 votes. This is going to take a while. Everyone needs to figure out where they sit before they can kind of make an educated choice. So, I don't think this is going to, who knows? Nobody knows. But I don't think this is going to be like a 4 vote. Watch it now become 4 votes and just prove me wrong. But I don't think this is going to be a 4 vote thing. I think this could be either a kind of a 3 vote or, a 9 to 11 vote kind of situation.
Yeah, I just said it's not going to be one vote deal, and that's never happened. Watch it be one vote, and people are just going to turn us off. What do you? I mean, yeah, when the like young Asian cardinals from the periphery are getting lost, you said it's not inspiring. Beyond that, maybe even the liberals in the church are going to rethink the periphery at that point. They're like, okay, the periphery's out. These guys, unless they're actually playing Pokemon Go, they need to go back where they're from and not be cardinals. But I think this is something interesting. Paroline has been getting hatcheted, and he would be a terrifically horrible choice. God willing, he won't be it. But 2 days ago, Cardinal Erdo, who had been credited with giving his voting block to Paroline, was reported by Edward Habsburg, our friend. Any speculation of a pre-conclave deal between Cardinal Erdo, and former Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Paroline is totally false. Cardinal Erdo is engaged in no such discussions. That's good, but why is everyone coming out, every liberal, do you have any speculation, George, and saying it's not going to be Paroline, he had a fake heart attack? They weren't saying it was fake. They're pointing at his deal with Cardinal Becciu and the horrible real estate deal. They pointed at other sort of false flags. I don't want Paroline. Why do you think the leftists are trying to hatchet the Paroline papacy?
Well, there could be one of two reasons. Either, in my opinion, there's normally two reasons for this, just being totally cynical. And one thinks about this in political terms. Either they're basically talking down their own candidate to the extent that people then feel like he's the underdog. So they're like, oh, yeah, well, actually, this guy isn't going to win, so I'm just going to cast my vote for him in the first round. And hey, presto, he suddenly got 90 votes and then he wins. Or the second reason could be because they're laying up a second place candidate. And I think that's probably the more likely of the two, is that they're trying to talk down the Paroline option because they're going to be saying, actually, we realize that it's going to be impossible to get him over the line. He was too close to Pope Francis. He was too close to the China deal. There's kind of residual question marks over his involvement in the London property deal, which obviously Cardinal Becciu went down for. And there's just been too many mistakes, and there's a kind of a sense that he was too close to Pope Francis. So we better talk him down and then possibly talk up, a second place candidate. Whether that's an Aveline or whether that's Mendoza or someone like that. So there's going to be. This is all politics right now, and there's a lot of possibilities for why they would want to talk down a front runner because they could be laying up a second place, right? And coming back to what we just said a second ago, like if this vote goes to 9 votes, we are looking at that means that everyone's first horse has fallen. So then it's going to be, the second bucket. And so in that second bucket, who are we finding in that second bucket? You've got people like Prevost, you've got people like Aveline, you've got people like Grech, obviously Pizzaballa, you've got, you can even put like an Mbongo or Ranjith in there, people like that. They're more the kind of second tier candidates who are probably less likely to be straight out the gate. And if you're talking down Paroline and talking potentially up one of the second tier, that's going to potentially get the voting blocks to switch after, say, those first 3 rounds. Okay, we've also heard of this guy. We've also heard of Aveline, because he's definitely been getting a lot of traction in the last couple of days, which is concerning because he's, his nickname is the French Francis, so obviously he's not somebody who we want. But that could be one of the reasons.
What I learned from Mrs. Giulia Meloni is that we don't know the secret rules of the conclaves, but what we do know is that at the first vote used this first day, the first scrutiny, they basically clear all, at least preliminarily, all the other names out aside from the key 2 or 3 guys getting most of the votes. So it's different than we might assume if the rules were even slightly different. Like the ones that are fast out of the gate, they're going to sort of see if they can go with the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th scrutiny, see if they can get to the 2/3 mark. And then they only will go to candidates outside of the sort of preliminary strong showing afterwards. Have you heard that as well? I only learned that in Mrs. Maloney's Sankt Gallen Mafia book, which is, oh, look who that's forwarded by, handsomest man in the universe. I just saw that right now. No, but I learned so much from this book. Have you heard that? And where do you sit on the Gallon group? Do you think that's speculation? There's two questions in one. I'll let you go for it.
Well, on the first question about clearing out the kind of clearing out the names, yeah, I mean, that's definitely what the first couple of votes are traditionally for. So, I mean, if they haven't decided kind of after one vote, if for some whatever reason, the first couple of votes haven't yielded the results, by that point, the field should have definitely been thinned. So, you're probably going to have maybe 5 candidates left in the race by that point. That's not to say that at some point down the road, a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th candidate, depends on how long the conclave goes for, obviously. But if they haven't got to kind of a pope by the 9th vote, then they might obviously start putting somebody else forward. But certainly those first couple of votes are obviously designed to kind of winnow out the weaker candidates who are obviously not going to have the running to go all the way. That might be different this time, just because of the fact that there are so many cardinals and there are so many people who don't know each other. So as a result, it's going to be, hard for they might just vote for themselves. They're just going to be okay, I'm going to see who's the main candidate going to be? Okay, I don't know any of these guys, so I'm just going to vote for myself, wait to see how this goes, or vote for somebody that I know, just vote for some random name. So it might take a few more votes before the field is thinned.
Yeah.
On the Singala Mafia, I mean, I was just meeting with some people before I walked up here, but...
Are you in the mafia, George? No, you're like, I was just at a meeting.
Not the Sangalam one, I can promise you that. Whatever the conservative one of that one is, let's make that happen. Yeah. But the point being is that I find it funny because, this is universal across politics and sadly politics in the church as well. It's the right plays by the rules and the left plays by nobody's rules. Right. And so we're always kind of spent chasing the left, and actually we end up realizing that they're just playing by their own rule book and no one has a clue. The trouble with that is that, the pacts made before conclave, it's on pain of excommunication, as you well know. You're not allowed to decide who you're going to vote for as a group, as a pact. That's forbidden under church law. The Singala Mafia basically made it very clear that they had decided who they were going to vote for, who they were going to field, who they were going to pitch other cardinals to vote for. And that's just kind of clear rule breaking in plain sight. Obviously, this time round, the Singala Mafia kind of has been a little bit weakened, I think, by just the appointment of so many cardinals from parts of the world that they would have no influence over. That's one positive of having a lot of New World cardinals. It's just that most of these guys don't know the internal workings of the church. Mm-hmm. They certainly don't know the internal workings of, the kind of European cardinal political sphere, if you want to call it that. But I do think that there hasn't been a conservative pact. Obviously, the conservatives play by the rules. They're not going to do that. They're not going to make a pact to vote for one candidate before the conclave. That's just not the kind of thing that they would do. But obviously, the left has no qualms with this. I mean, it's also, I should probably stop using the phrase left and conservative in this sense. It's really orthodox versus progressive, kind of Catholic orthodox versus the more progressive wing of the church. Is probably a better way to describe it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I still find it fitting. What of this? I don't know if you heard this 2 days ago. This is reported by Rich Reho, everyone's favorite, super faithful Catholic on Twitter. Cardinal Casper said this: I am convinced that we will continue along Bergoglio's line. I've spoken about it with many cardinals. And when asked about the opposing factions, he wrote, in the general congregations, the conservative cardinals, he and I share the view that using left-right is absolutely fine and apropos. The conservative cardinals seem to be a small group, which is my assessment. The church cannot allow itself to backtrack. That's, of course, him opining. But unless he's lying here, I tend to trust Casper and Rich Rehomath more than anybody. What do you think of that?
The great thing about the conclave is that it's secret and nobody knows how you're voting, right? So, there can be a lot. I think a lot of people pay lip service to a lot of things that Francis did. I mean, you saw this when he was Pope. Everyone was terrified. This was always the case. Like, people were living in fear. You could talk to bishops, you could talk to cardinals who would say the same thing. I don't want to go to Rome because I'm too frightened to go to Rome. Or I don't want to put a foot out of line because I'm too frightened. And I've spoken about this, in other public spheres, but it's like the one thing that the church has really lacked in recent years is courage. We just haven't had a lot of courageous bishops. We haven't had a lot of courageous cardinals who have been willing to go out there and say, this is wrong. This is, in defiance of the magisterium of the church. But the thing about this now is that like Casper and, the more progressive wing of the church can say we're going to have another Francis. But the thing is that nobody knows how this is going to turn out in the voting. And I don't think that there are a lot of New World cardinals. I don't think there are a lot of cardinals out there who want another Francis, because everyone was kind of terrified when he was Pope. That was kind of the hallmark of his reign. It was just random Argentine, dictatorial whim, which basically governed the church. And the Financial Times wrote a piece, which is a super progressive, publication, more globalist, I would say, than progressive. But they wrote a piece which I thought was interesting about 10 days ago, I want to say, where they talked about Pope Francis's kind of Argentine population and how they didn't, he was not basically that popular in Argentina. And in part, that was because he mirrored the politics of Peron. And obviously that was his kind of he was brought up under the Peronist system, and his style of governance was Peronist, right? And there's not many people in the world who would want to live under an Argentine dictator, let alone a global church, which needs to be governed under those kind of rules. And so as a result, I don't think you're going to see a second Francis. You could see somebody, what does that mean? I just don't think you're going to see somebody who's as arbitrary as he was,
right.
Who kind of made the same ambiguous statements that he did, who kind of injected a lot of moral ambivalency in the ethical questions that surround the church. But, what you could see is a progressive who comes in, he doesn't have the same kind of dictatorial whim, but he might, still want to push progressive policies or whatever he might want to do in that sphere. He might still, if you get someone like a Zuppi, who's obviously very pro-LGBT, that could come in and say, I'm going to push LGBT in the church, but I don't think he would do that in an Argentine style. So there's very few people out there, very few people in the conclave who I think could possibly be kind of worse than Francis. There are a couple of cardinals who I would be very disturbed if we got them as Pope, like Cardinal Ratcliffe, obviously. But there's not that many who I think are going to be worse than him.
Yeah, Francis was a huge Peron enthusiast as a youth, loved him all throughout his life, and never returned to Argentina as Pope. And there was tons of speculation back in the day as to why there was never a return home trip. That's very unusual. Popes do return home trips. He was wildly unpopular there. And I agree that none of the guys who in the College of Cardinals who might be even further to the left than Francis in his Peronist ways, he was weirdly right wing on one or two issues. There are further left guys like Zuppi, more progressive, whatever you will. And I agree with you, George. There's not going to be the same climate of fear, the wiretapping that we learned of in 2017, 2018 in Vatican City. I don't think that's going to return. But I am, I guess, cynical when it comes to the only people I really trust are the Gallin group types who, because they operate outside of the rules, it's like playing a sport and you're allowed to run out of bounds, the other team's not. I just think they have it locked up. I hope you're right that they don't, but I'm expecting, for my part, if I had to pick right now, a no-name radical who's deliberately been kept out of media limelight, who's going to be like Zuppi, very, very pro-LGBT, but not known and deliberately kept out of the running. That's strongly who I'm thinking we're going toward. But and he won't be known as a leftist right off the bat.
Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. Look, before the 2024 election, it's always better to emotionally hedge yourself and basically be like, the other side's definitely going to win. And I sort of thought about this scenario, obviously, let's just say we get a super progressive Pope again, who obviously wants to push the church into the realm of female deacons and LGBT and synodality and all that kind of nonsense. What's that gonna mean? It's basically gonna mean, for the traditional wing of the church, it's more of the same, and that's kind of what we've been living with. We've been living with this for the last 12 years. And so as a result, it's okay, well, we're just going to have to carry on doing what we're doing. In some ways it can kind of only get better, I want to say, for the traditional wing of the church, because it's it can't really get much worse. It can get worse. There are obviously things that could be done, but I think it will be unusual for somebody to come in and then deliberately continue the kind of very tyrannical repression of the Latin Mass, and the kind of very strong arm, position of like, okay, well, we're really going to push the synodality idea. I just don't see many bishops or cardinals wanting that within their diocese. Agreed.
What do you think of accelerationism in general? This is my thing. I'd rather have a Cardinal Zuppi or a no-name Zuppi or Tagle right off the bat than another JP2. I think JP2 is a center leftist that was characterized as a center rightist. In retrospect, I'm tempted to even say the same thing about Benedict XVI. So I'm an accelerationist in general.
Yeah, make it worse before you make it worse, basically. Make it worse faster.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I mean, there's, it would, the kind of expression, like if you're going to boil the frogs will jump out of the water if the water boils, but they won't jump out if the water just heats up gently. That's kind of, I feel like, where we've been a little bit with the church. Obviously, it's like we can all feel it's getting worse. We know it's getting worse. It's like you can just feel the kind of slow Black Death spreading. But we're sort of making it work. We're surviving, all this kind of stuff. Like, would it be better if we just had, somebody come in and be like, I'm going to make your lives absolute hell, and I'm just going to really push the church in a progressive way. Yeah, that could, I think you've already seen, it's kind of ironic under Pope Francis, obviously, that the Latin Mass exploded, and traditional Catholicism has exploded across the Western world. And of course, as has been documented very well in the past, couple of months, like you're seeing this very large number of converts come into the church now. Mm-hmm. And the overwhelming thing they're saying is, I want hierarchy, I want structure, I want orthodoxy. I didn't come here because I want to be read the Guardian, from the editorial page for my Sunday homily. I came into this because I believe this is the one true faith, and it's honored the traditions of the apostles all the way down to the current day. Mm-hmm. That movement isn't going to die just because there's, a progressive pope. It's going to probably carry on growing in the way that it has been growing for the last few years, as it did under Pope Francis. And what does that mean? It means that, maybe not this pontificate, perhaps, but maybe the next pontificate or the pontificate after that is going to be somebody who, at some point, the class of seminarians who are currently in the church are going to be the bishops. They're going to be the cardinals. These are the people who are going to be in charge of the church at some point. And so one hopes that whether it be this pontificate or the next one or the one after that, you're going to see a pope who's actually willing to kind of honor the return to tradition that you're seeing being expressed by so many people who are being accepted into the church now.
Yeah, it's the Platonic rule. Takes 4 generations or so. Did you see, George, the Edward Penton article from 2 days ago on the 10 things that people like he and you and I want to see out of the next pope? I mean, it's not representative of many folks, but did you see that thing? Because I'm wondering.
No, I didn't see it.
It was great. I mean, I think he speaks for me pretty much. He's a good man whom I trust. One of the few that I trust that are reporting on this stuff. I think he could probably speak for you as well if I had to venture a guess. But it was
Edwin and I. He's a very good man. I like him very much.
He is Catholic Obi-Wan Kenobi, I call him. Yeah, I like him very much too. He's not only a good man, but a nice man. Not only a nice man, but a good man. But it was phenomenal. I could read the list of 10, but I think it would basically redouble what you would say, or I would say, what would a Pope Lord Farmer do if what would be the first things you would tend to?
That's a great question, and not one that I've actually thought about this. I would say, look, I think the first thing that a lot of traditional Catholics would say would be like, restore the hierarchy, restore order, restore canon law. That's probably the number one thing, because at the moment, canon law has been trampled on in an effort to kind of push forward various themes like synodality. So, when you see the German bishops, for example, clearly defying church law by doing LGBT masses and stuff like that, that's obviously complete contravention of church law and church teaching. Mm-hmm. And so a restoration of canon law, of church law, would be, I think, the number one thing that I would be like, that's where you have to kind of start straight out the door. You've just got to have somebody who's willing to come in and say, these are the rules. If you guys don't play by the rules, you're going to be kicked out. You're going to be defrocked. You're going to be excommunicated. I think beyond that, I would also say there's probably an argument to be like, I mean, I wouldn't say give tradition more of a role, but I would say that, like, listen to them. If you're talking, it's ironic because, of course, you talked about synodality. We talked about synodality a whole lot in the last few years within the church. It's like, if you're really listening to the voice of the church, then you would want to give tradition more of a role, because that's clearly where the church is going. Like, church is heading more traditional. So, restore the old mass, perform an apostolic constitution, to honor Summorum Pontificum. There's various liturgical things that I think you could push through and should do honor to that. And then beyond that, I would say, like, I don't know what I would do beyond that. There's a couple of different routes you could take. Clean house the Vatican. The Vatican deep state is one of the deepest Vatican states in the world. It's like one of the deepest deep states in the world. There needs to be like a Vatican Doge who come in and kind of rip out the hierarchy. So that's probably something else that would be on the list. I don't know. I mean, what did Edward put down? He's much more informed about these things than I am.
Yep. No, it's all basically what it doubles for me as well. I know you're out of time, George. Thanks for your valuable time here. I appreciate it. Are we anywhere close to smoke? I know you got to run.
Well, so why I think it's going to take a little bit longer is just because if you think about 133 votes, they've then got to read 133 votes. They've then got to verify them 3 times. So I think we're probably looking at an 8 p.m., like 7:45, 8 p.m. smoke for the first round. Okay.
I'll probably stick around. I know you got to run. Thanks for this. I'll probably stick around and then just play some live shots, not from a farmer cam, but
you can just see St. Peter's Basilica.
Yeah. Thank you so much, George. This has been incredible. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks a million, brother. Yeah, peace. Thanks. Talk to you soon. Yeah, while I was on live with George, our mutual friend Michael Knowles was telling me some George lore by text, and I was asking what would a Pope MK Ultra Michael Knowles do? I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, but let's get a live look on the. I'll get it up here for you, Tim. Let's see here. Live look of the chimney. Everybody was asking for that. I couldn't put up George and a live look at the same time, so
no, that was great.
George was more important for that time. Let's go. Let's see here.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Lord Farmer.
Lord George.
Not to be confused with Lord Farquaad. Lord Farmer. Thank you very much for that.
Gentleman and a scholar.
Yeah, it's just cool to have a live look, and I'm always tempted to travel. Is it smoky?
No, I'll let you know. We have people. It's funny on Twitter.
What?
People were saying we also should have added on our poll. Let me see if I can find that here in a second. When we did a conclave poll where we said what pope or what cardinal is going to be picked and how many days and what will he be known as? What will he be Pope so and so? And somebody said we should have also added how many seagulls will be on the roof of the Vatican when the smoke comes. Yeah. Right now we have 2 seagulls, as you can see on there. Let me see if I can find our conclave pool. I'll keep going to the chimney. Obviously, let me see here. Let me see if I can show our conclave pool. Tim, you can continue rapping.
I'm surprised Daily Wire didn't send Knowles or Walsh.
Yeah, that's true.
I know there's some other minor people from Daily Wire going, but I was kind of surprised about that one. It's interesting because there's such a spirit of optimism, and I just don't share in it. I do not share in it. I feel people know I take pretty, I think, fair accountability for predictions made over the last 7 years. And I can't envision a Pope Sarah. That would be my favorite. I can't envision a Pope Pizzaballa, though he is an unknown. We don't know what his policies would be as pontiff, as supreme pontiff. Pontifex Maximus. So I don't know. Maybe he just seems kind of like a pizza balla, and scoop up the conservative votes, get to 2/3, and then he's actually more like a JP2 kind of center left guy, characterized with a right wing aura.
Right.
I fear that in Pizza Ball, but I don't even think we're going to see him. I don't think we're going to see, like I've said before, Pope Zuppi or a Pope Tagle. Tagle maybe.
I'm worried about
Tagre.
that one most of all, I think.
I think Tagre, yeah, and I don't know what all of the subterfuge surrounding former Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin amounts to. I don't know what it points at, but they're really trying to at least signal that they're hatcheting him. And I don't know if that means he's still Vegas 2-1.
Oh dear.
So I do trust odds makers. Not to sound like cynical guy. I'm not really a black pill guy, but I do trust Vegas odds makers more than the Vaticanisti, and I do trust guys like little Richie Rejo, little Tricky Dick Rejo, and Gallon Group guys like Cardinal Casper, because they always hide in plain sight. They don't really even hide; they just admit in plain sight what they're going to do, and then they go do it.
We have our conclave pull up right now, by the way.
Oh, dope. Okay, yeah.
So I made this, and again, apologies because people were noticing that I colored some of them wrong. So.
How so?
I think I made on accident Erdo red and he should have been green. But again, they're just up there. The names are up there. And so our conclave pool for rules for retrogrades is for the 267th Pope. So if you want to answer in chat, number one, the conclave will last how many days? And so like Tim said before he was going through this, the average length of the last 10 conclaves was 3.2 days. The cardinal elected will be, or the unknown person, I guess we have an unknown up there. So say how many days, who will be elected, and what they will be known as. So there's a little graphic for that.
That's cool. Yeah,
You're having
before
fun.
I knew that you hung that, Stevie, I was getting people answering the three parts of the call of the three calls of the question, and I was like, "What the hell?"
You're like, "What in the name of?"
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool to get Gregory 17 or Leo 14 or no, it would be Leo 14 or Pius 13. We should get our Pius the 12 Piuses clock in here.
We should, yeah.
I bought one for me and one for Taylor as a kind of celebration of our thing. I wonder if he still has the 12 Piuses clock.
Oh, that's funny.
That's a dope clock.
That's a good clock.
I don't think we're getting Pius 13 or Leo 14 or Gregory 17. I don't think so. If we do, then I've already pledged to kiss a pig because none of this gay lover modernists are going to take any of those three pontifical names or even any of the other good ones. And I think we're getting a no-name modernist. That's strongly where I think. I'm not trying to be fashionably cynical because we're going to find out. And I also like to keep a strong batting average, good track record of predictions. So I'm going to be talking to you in 2 days or 4 days or 5 days or 6 days or whatever it is, and have to eat the words. I really think it's going to be a no name. We find out he's a leftist, and then what will happen? The Pope-splainers will kick in, and they'll just wash away his leftiness, which is what you saw in front of your very eyes with the Francis candidacy and eventually the Francis pontificate. You saw, okay, this guy's a lefty. Yeah, he was the characterization of a Juan Perón enthusiast like Francis was, and the weird South American Buenos Aires politics does make a weird mixture of left-right, but it's the only thing that they really call right-wing about him is that he was early on sort of an anti-homo Jesuit, which is unique for the Jesuits, and he has this authoritarian streak. He shed the former, he never shed the latter. So he's not really a right-left guy. He's just a man of the left. But they would tell you for all those 12 years, these crazy-ass Pope-splainers, that you can believe me when I'm telling you Pope Francis is a based right-winger, or you can believe your own lying eyes and ears. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did. So they're going to do that now. We're going to get one of these lesser modernists, I strongly believe. This is all misdirection. Like they did at the 05 conclave and the 13 conclave. It was Bergoglio was their choice there. Bergoglio was their choice at 13. And they just lied in differing ways about it won't be Bergoglio in 05 because he's a no-name. But they knew what they're going to do since 1996 for 9 years before. The Gallon Group had known Bergoglio was their man starting in 1996. Well, originally it was supposed to be Pope Martini, but he got Parkinson's like JP2. And then they quickly, under the watchful governance of Cardinal Achille Silvestrini, was like, we need to get this Bergoglio. So they knew what they're going to do for over 5 years, I should say that, before 05. And then they just lied about it. And they said, oh, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Ratzinger, or is it going to, here are the main leftists? And all the while, they knew it was going to be Bergoglio, who came second in the voting, even though he was a no-name. In 2013, everyone knew Bergoglio, all the Vaticanisti, but they said, he's too old. We ain't going to go for a 76-year-old. And then they just did. So they're doing, I think, the same misdirection. You still have you have many of the old Gaulen guys surviving, and you have some new Gaulen guys that are now new to the ranks. We'll find out kind of who their names are through the reportage of useful idiots like Austin Ivory, however you say it. And that'll be later. But I think I've discerned the, I've recognized the pattern in the static here. I really do think I have. And if I'm wrong, then I'll come to you and tell you that as we await the eventuality of black smoke, the certitude of black smoke today. There's no way they elect the first, one guy on the first scrutiny before they've even had a chance to look around and say, who are you voting for? I'm going to go for that.
How many people in chat think we're getting white smoke? How many people think so? Right? White smoke or black smoke? What do you think we're getting first? Tim says black.
Yeah.
You think so? No,
I don't think it's
one
ever
vote.
happened.
Not one vote.
I mean, I guess if they were to go for, it would be a coincidence if on the first vote they came up with a candidate that had 2/3 majority. What is that? 88 out of 133. It would be a tremendous coincidence, and I think the PR stunt here would be to make this one go longer than the 5 scrutinies of 2013, the 4 scrutinies of 2005, maybe even the 8 scrutinies of 1978. I think they're going to, for the purposes of appearing deadlocked for a while, we're really scratching our skulls over this one. I think that's what they want to signal to the world. They want to show, in basketball pick and roll language, we would say they're going to show a deadlock. But the Gaulen group always knows what they're going to do. The question is, do they still maintain the political capital to pull off what they nearly pulled off in 05 and did pull off in 2013? My friend George Farmer, who understands this stuff, says, thanks to goodness, probably no. I say probably yes. I say probably yes. So we'll see.
Somebody in chat said white smoke matters.
White smoke matters.
We have some funny responses.
White smoke does matter.
They
know that? I can't breathe. It's white smoke. But yeah, white smoke matters.
Let's put that one back up. Thank you, Gen X Catholic. That was well done. Well played, sir. Well played.
Catholic. White smokes matter. What did you guys think? Let's talk to some of the peeps here. What did you guys think of that CNN clip on Tucker Carlson?
We can play that while we're waiting for some smoke if you want me to.
Yeah, let's play it.
Okay.
My nerds.
Hey, if in chat, help me out, because again, I can only show one thing at once. So if we have smoke, tell me, and I'll stop the CNN interview and we'll go straight to the live view of the Vatican. So while we're waiting, let's have some fun, shall we? Let's get Tim's CNN clip up. Here we go. Let me find it.
We could play that here.
Yes, sir.
Just for shits and gigs.
Did Michael Knowles ever write back what he would do if he were
Pope Knowles?
Pope Knowles, MK Ultra? Pope MK Ultra.
MK Ultra. That would Pope MK Ultra the first.
Oh boy. All right. Sorry. I have to scroll through your Twitter. Wow, you've been tweeting a lot. So let me get through. Yikes. Let me see. Bear with me, please. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to see if we get right to the
Pope MK Ultra
Subway
the first.
is the place to fill up.
We don't want to hear a Subway ad, do we?
Look, we saw enough of Mike Lewis to know Subway is the place to fill up. We saw enough of Jabba.
Oh, no. Poor Mike. He really made you look so good. And you already look great, but he made you look even better than you naturally look.
Yeah,
you
comparatively.
look so good.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you
Come
know
on,
what?
Subway.
Frankly, without these lights, this is what you call good lighting in here. But those.
Oh, here we go.
He liked women's lib.
Let me see if I can scroll
said
in.
some really evil things. Because women should develop economic skills. Why? I mean,
Why?
The ironic thing is some women do. Like, you actually kind of have.
Sorry.
This is Timothy J.
Sorry, let me just zoom out real quick so people can see this a little bit better. I'm a boomer, sorry.
Yeah, Steffi, you're quite good with tech, but you're always on when we're watching stuff on the laptop, you're always leaving it minimized, like this big. And you have bad vision too. I'm always surprised. And you always leave the cursor down on the play button, so it's gray the whole time.
That's what
weird.
I'm a boomer for.
You're so much techier than me.
It's so true. I'm such a boomer. Okay, I'm going to start it over. How about that? Here we go. This is Tim's clip on CNN it's called Pope and Patriarchy, Why the Manosphere is Watching This Conclave Closely. So let's watch this closely as we watch the conclave closely.
And I will watch you watching closely.
You watch. Okay, here we go. I want to let me press play.
Because you're a boomer.
Is it because I'm...
I can read the rest of Cardinal Ray's.
Yeah, read while I try to figure this son of a gun out. Sorry.
So
maybe it's like can tell I'm like live streaming it out.
Yeah, so I to get to pipe George in to the feed, I paused halfway through Cardinal Batista Ray's earlier this morning election of the Pope sermon. And he's referring to the first chapter in Acts. It's really, really inspiring. One of my favorite chapters in all of the New Testament, the first chapter of Acts. It says, "This is the message of love, which Jesus calls a new commandment. It is new because it transforms into something positive and greatly expands the admonition of the Old Testament that said, do not do to others what you would not want done to you. The love that Jesus reveals knows no limits and must characterize the thoughts and actions of all his disciples, who must always show authentic love in their behavior and commit themselves to building a new civilization, what Paul VI called the civilization of love." That just sounds so. Remember, Paul VI, literally before he took the office of pontificate, had to come out and assure everyone he was not gay. So when you're
Why are you gay?
Why are you gay? And he was like, "I'm not gay. You are gay."
You are gay.
But
I think I have the thing.
But when you call it a civilization of love, people are like, "Why are you gay, dude?" Holy Father. Love is the only force capable of changing the world, sounding sort of gay again, but in the sense of caritas, it's not. Jesus gave us an example of this love at the beginning of the Last Supper with a surprising gesture. He humbled himself in the service of others, washing the feet of the apostles without discrimination and not excluding Judas, who he knew would betray him. The message of Jesus connects to what we heard in the first reading of the Mass, in which the prophet Isaiah reminded us that the fundamental quality of pastors is to love to the point of complete self-giving. It gets a little kind of dry and more like your Novus Ordo sermon here. I found the opening quite strong. But yeah, you can play.
Let's play this again.
Forget what the Cardinal said at the Mass.
Let's watch
Play my thing. Play my spot.
Here we go. Oh, it's doing it again. Sorry, let me... Sorry.
I'm not going to
back to you for a second. Let me just reload. I think it can tell I'm live streaming it, so it's trying to stop me from having fun.
Look at that thing I sent you.
Let me see.
This is kind of could turn out important.
Is it a smoke?
Yeah, can you play that?
Hold on. Can I?
You see the smoke?
Is he smoke? Oh boy. Yeah. Let me see. I don't know why.
In sporting news, which I know all of you nerds out there don't care about at all. Sorry.
Okay, here's you.
Right.
Here's you. Let me see if I can do
Steph Curry.
He liked women's lib. John Paul II, it said some really evil things. Because women should develop economic skills. Why? I mean,
Why?
The ironic thing is some women do. Like, you actually kind of have.
This is Timothy J. Gordon. You get a lot of hate?
Some. Lots really happened in the last 3 years that has helped to normalize and pave the way.
As you might be able to tell from his home decor, Timothy is a Christian. In fact, he's part of a conservative Catholic movement known as traditionalism.
Basically, society is kind of the matrix. If you look at it from outside the matrix, everything is wired to make women think that they can be independent. And women aren't independent of men. And this the Bible teaches us this. St. Paul says it in 3 places. Women are by their nature dependent on men, they're sort of defined in terms of their man. They're a helpmeet, and they're happy that way. And they get miserable when they're forced to be the main character acting like a man out in the world.
See, that's tough light.
Is part
there.
of the
That's bad light.
manosphere, a group of online influencers that tell young men they need to fight against feminism.
There's some competing iterations of how to restore masculinity. You've probably heard of, Andrew Tate, and those guys offer a perfectly valid critique of feminism.
The woman must learn that her man is an iron mountain and the easiest path is to obey.
But Timothy says people like Tate are not helping.
They're bringing solutions to these young men that aren't true. And they're saying, sleep with a bunch of women, contraception and birth control. It was basically feminism for men.
March has turned out to be International Women's Month.
Timothy has 7 kids and preaches an interpretation of the Bible that is rooted in patriarchy.
Now, my wife doesn't have to be a follower of any of all men, but every woman is literally called in 8 places in the New Testament to follow her husband under pain of sin. Under pain of sin. And that's the way it's good. That's the way she shows her love for God.
Mike Lewis is the founding managing editor of the blog Where Peter Is, a site he says was set up in part to respond to American traditionalist Catholics' attacks on Pope Francis. Like Tim Gordon's argument is, it's there in black and white in the Bible. Women are there to serve men. Men are dominant. There is a patriarchy.
Well, I would classify that as a fundamentalist point of view. The Catholic Church has always been very clear that it is the Pope and the bishops in communion with him.
Can you pause here?
Authentically
I can't
interpret
pause it.
Scripture.
It won't let me
And this
keep
is
going.
wholeheartedly
Sorry.
rejected.
He's lying.
By figures who are into this Catholic version of the man.
He's lying. We'll show you.
Francis
We'll
was
show you what the popes
popular with
teach about
manosphere Catholics
Scripture.
like Timothy.
The worst pope in the history of 266 Roman Catholic popes. The misbehavior, if you want to call it that, has been all doctrinal. Revolution aimed at teaching, aimed at modifying the church, aimed at contradicting irreformable doctrine.
And among broader traditionalist Catholics like Steve Bannon.
And we stand in absolute defiance of this Pope. The Vatican deep state is the mother of all deep states. The movement of conservative Catholics, traditional Catholics, even people, young people going to the Orthodox side of Catholicism, is one of the great developments in the 21st century.
Tim Gordon might have a extreme traditional view of the Bible and saying that it's all about the patriarchy. But even though the church has had reforms, women still can serve as priests. Isn't the Catholic Church still just the patriarchy? And is Tim Gordon more right than we want to admit?
Hell yes!
Take the perspective that Pope Francis has taken, which is that the church is the people of God on a journey.
On a journey.
On a journey,
We
Mike.
can see opportunities for dialogue opening up regarding women's roles, regarding
Mike, you're
how
always on a journey to
we
the Burger
welcome
King, aren't
the
you?
LGBTQ
With a dialogue opening.
Mike is
He just
worried
mentioned
what
the
manosphere
LGBTQ.
could do to the
So
Catholic Church in America.
So
Tim
fat.
Gordon, and I've seen others basically say that they're seeing an uptick in young men picking up the Catholic faith because of these very traditionalist, extreme views on women.
He admits it.
From what I've heard, it is a trend. I've seen reports of conversions due to this. I think there are a lot of disenfranchised young males who are looking for something.
That's your fat ass there are, Mike.
That in a lot of cases,
Yes.
it's due to an alt-right ideology that isn't in line with what the Catholic Church teaches.
Bet your ass.
And other traditionalist Catholics, they view this conclave as one of the most important in the church's history. What happens if the next pope is like Francis?
Gosh, this is a bad
It
light
will
here.
be
Such a
catastrophic for the church, because if there's another Francis prototype, then it'll probably mean schism in the church.
It's going to immediately start playing Ava Longoria talking about how Ham made her cry. So,
Damn.
man, lighting makes such a difference. That lighting in the dining room downstairs, I knew was terrible. It's just, it's annoying when they don't bring nice ring lights or something. But otherwise, I thought Donnie and his crew were pretty darn fair. What they showed on Anderson Cooper was not quite as in depth and not quite as flattering to our side, the true side of the teaching. But should we put up that thread, or is this too far afield? Or, I also sent
Your
you
thread?
just the pinned thread, because Mike Lewis said that I was only a biblical fundamentalist and that the popes had never taught what I was saying about intersexuality that they had taught, and that's just a pile of rich creamery butter.
Yeah, it's like what I'd like to ask Mike is like, okay, fine, fair enough. Disregard Tim's interpretation of scripture. Well, why don't we go to the popes? Well, here we have many popes agreeing with, guess who? Tim Gordon's interpretation of scripture.
These are all 20th century popes too. Literally, we're citing from Leo the 13th in Arcanum. He's technically a 20th century pope because he's pope until 1903. We got Pius X. We got Benedict XV. We got
Vatican II.
Vatican II itself. Pius XI. Pius XII. JP2 was schizo on the feminism issue, but he said lots of anti-feminist stuff, also said a lot of feminist stuff, and said he wanted to be called the feminist pope.
Here they all are, popes, not just Tim Gordon or Steph Gordon saying stuff. Yeah. Besides scripture, by the way, scripture itself says these things, but here are the Pope's interpretation of those things. So what is he talking about? And that's one of the things that the CNN guy said that to you behind the scenes. He was like, they have a harder time. People who go against you on this issue have a uphill battle, because it's not only there in black and white, but the church still practices misogyny, if you want to call it that, where women are not allowed to be priests. They're not allowed to be a pope. They're not allowed to do any of this stuff. So de facto, you're correct. And one of the things we were talking about last night, which was interesting, is that why don't people like Mike Lewis ever try to modernize some of the scriptural verses that they like feeding the poor? In Christ's day, obviously, the poor were a bigger class. It was real poverty. Most of the poor in America are grossly overweight. They have access to all sorts of programs. They're not trying to modernize, if you will, the scriptural verses that they go along with. A lot of these guys like Mike Lewis, it's only the ones that they're like, yeah, I disagree. That was 2,000 years ago. We've evolved since then. Society has evolved.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, society's involved, so we don't need to help the poor anymore. And I don't actually agree with that view, but if we're going to be modernist, and neither do you, but if we're going to be modernist and say, well, this has changed. The poor people are fat now. Poor people are either fat, or if they're thin, it's because they're on meth. It's not the same thing as the impoverished class Jesus was talking about. That's kind of a strong case, though I'm never going to take the historical critical approach to our Lord's words. I think, is there white smoke? Holy cow.
No.
Can we? Yeah, look.
What?
I sent you something.
Oh, I didn't see. I don't have anything on text.
On text? No. Look at this. Look at this.
You breaking us, Tim Gordon.
Look at this.
I don't have anything.
I'm serious.
Let me
try it. Look.
Hold on. I can't. I don't have anything.
We're getting reports that we have a first scrutiny white smoke.
Hold on. Let me see if I can get this up, because I have.
What in the world?
Hold on.
People.
Hold on. I got to remove this and I had to add it back in. Hold on. Oh no. I can't just transition into this as quickly as you were wanting me to. Oh no, I don't think I can show it. Let me see.
First vote, white smoke.
Darn, I don't think I can show it. Let me see. Is it a...
My friend AJ Barker said, people don't realize modern individuals don't have the stamina to keep grinding out votes in debates over principles. So true. This is AJ at his best. I love AJ's analysis. They give in and cave. We see this same thing in Congress. Absolutely true. Filibusters are much weaker than they used to be in the 1800s. They don't stand for much. They don't affect much change. The Constitution was written by men grinding for weeks on end away from home when they had traveled by... Don't say grinding, AJ, in the context of conclaves, because those guys grind in a different way.
Come on.
Not all of them.
Pull it together.
if you had mental endurance, your views prevailed over time because people were beat to submission with them. And when they left, they weren't whining about how it went wrong. They viscerally submitted to it because they knew they got bodied for the previous 6 weeks and have totally tapped out.
I do have that thing now. Do you want me to show it?
Do we? Yeah. Do we have white smoke?
Here we go. Here we go.
This is, oh my gosh. Is this from St. Peter's or is that Mary Poppins? Yeah, we're just funning with y'all. That was a Anthony Abate gag. He's like, play this.
Oh, Anthony, is he in chat?
Ant-Man. I don't know. Is
blame
he in chat?
him for. So
yeah, AJ said chances the Pope is selected within the first 3 rounds. He said 50% plus. I don't think the first 3 scrutinies, no. But AJ stands for basically the same sort of cynicism I do, and chances the Pope is selected within the first 7 rounds, 90% plus. I do agree with that.
Mm.
Wait, maybe that was Anthony Bedoy, not Anthony. No, it was Anthony Abate.
That seems like an Anthony Abate type of gag.
Both my friends, Anthony Bedoy and Abate, were literally saying do the same gag. So thank you, both Anthonys. For lightning. I mean, do we really have no black smoke yet?
No, nothing. I'm looking at live feed on both on several platforms. Do you want to? Maybe we'll show some coverage of some of the things that people were getting. We're sharing on Twitter. Some of the pomp and things that we do beforehand. Here, Tim. I'll show you this. This is Catholic Sat. Said the conclave has begun. The doors of the Sistine Chapel, the Apostolic Palace, have been closed. So this is something they do every single time. So official closing out everybody. They're in there alone. There we go. We have the Swiss Guard.
Can they close the door more quietly? Cardinal electors, you don't need to slam the front door to St. Peter's. It's what I'm telling my kids all the time. Don't slam the door.
I'm going to be completely honest with you. If I were the one doing that, I would slam the door. I'd walk right up there and I would just do the one arm slam, slam everybody out.
Well, they agree with you because it's like, don't let the AC out. It's getting warm in Rome by early May, but you only save a second worth of AC to slam it that hard.
So there's a graphic on the screen now, 3 types of cardinals in the Catholic Church. Just for people who don't know, there's cardinal bishops, and they're the highest rank, and cardinal priests.
Cardinale Episcopi, Cardinale Presbytery, and Cardinale Diaconi.
Diacony.
Yeah. People don't know that. There are different levels, and it doesn't mean that they're not archbishops.
Right. So cardinal bishops hold the highest rank among cardinals. They typically come from suburbicarian dioceses around Rome. Cardinal priests, usually bishops of major dioceses around the world, and cardinal deacons generally serve in the Roman Curia. So interesting there.
I'll reread this. People maybe weren't all too. What do we have? 2,000 viewing right now?
Yeah, just about. Let me put live view of Vatican back on.
We didn't have as many viewers when we're talking expectation on conclave length. You guys missed it if you came late. Like a bunch of losers. We had George Farmer on for about 40 minutes in front of St. Peter's, just down not La Bicana. Oh, what's that street to the east of St. Peter's?
Right where the bookstore is?
No, that's to the south. No,
you were telling the Pozo brothers about where that.
Yeah,
location?
we might have a live man on the street with the Pozo brothers tomorrow. Jack and Kev. We had George Farmer today. We'll see how that goes. No, the street to the south, I'm also forgetting, with famous Ancora bookstore. We used to hang out there. It's a cool place. No, I mean to the east with the Castroni Cafe, where we used to buy cans of pumpkin when we lived there so we could make pumpkin pie. But we were talking to George because he's staying only for about 3 days. I'm like, do you think you'll be there for white smoke? And so we ran through expectation on cardinal conclave length. Based on recent history, the last 11 conclaves in 1878, that which gave us Pope Leo XIII, my favorite of all time. We had 3 scrutinies over 3 days. 1903, Pope Pius X named our latest born, middle named our latest born girl after Pius X, along with Pius V and Pius XI and Pius IX. you nickname Pius and you get like 4 for 1 or 5 for 1. That conclave in 1903 went 7 scrutinies over 5 days, held up by the Habsburg vote. Shout out to my friend Edward Habsburg. The Habsburg veto held it up. 1914, this is the Benedict 15 pontificate. Everyone forgets about Benedict 15, sort of the silent pope from the 20th century. 10 scrutinies over the course of 4 days. 1922, this would be the Pius XI pontificate, yielded by the 1922 conclave. 14 scrutinies, the most, over the course of 5 days. That's the longest conclave in the last 125 years, is 14 votes merely over the course of 5 days. 1939 conclave, which yielded to us Pius XII, 3 mere scrutinies over the course of 2 days. That was fast. Fast. 1958 conclave, which yielded John the 23rd. 11 scrutinies over 4 days. 5 mere years later, the 1963 conclave, which yielded even 2 thumbs down, Paul VI. 6 scrutinies over the course of 3 days. The first 1978 conclave, which yielded John Paul I, 33-day pontificate, 4 scrutinies over the course of 2 days. Just, 33 days plus change later, the second 1978 conclave, because John Paul I was killed by the mob and the Freemasons. You can go watch Godfather 3 if you want to see a fictionalized version of that.
Maybe we should just do a live viewing of that whole
Yeah.
Well, we're just doing everything at this point. Like, excuse me, while I make my kids lunch, we'll just
I got time.
bring it up here.
Yeah, if you want to get a good look at a bull's ass, the Tommy Boy joke, I got the time. I'll sit around and wait by the tail. The second 1978 conclave, that which yielded John Paul II's pontificate, was 8 scrutinies over the course of 3 days. Second longest pontificate ever was JP2. And then in the 2005 conclave, which yielded Benedict 16, we had 4 scrutinies over the course of 2 days. Everyone knew it was going to be Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger. He'd been the CDF, the presumptive sort of operative Holy Father during JP2's decline. The worst of all was that his opponents, the Galen group, knew it, and they couldn't avoid it, even though they nearly avoided a Ratzinger pontificate by way of, at that time, unknown Bergoglio, who came second in the voting in 2005. Again, I kind of refuse to shout out any work by Tan Books, but I will admit I've been going back to the St. Gallen Mafia. So
Julia Maloney is a great friend.
She's a great friend, stood up for Steph during that whole thing. This book, its forwarder is conspicuously handsome. I forget who the forward of the book is. I just know he's a handsome man.
Yeah,
and
I've heard epic tales about that. And
it's just a great book. So don't go buy it if you don't have it. But definitely, if you already own the book, get it out and read it. I don't want to aid Tan Books in any way. But finally, the 2013 conclave, which finally saw the Galen group prevailing with Bergoglio, after sort of failing in 2005, was 5 scrutinies over the course of 2 days. So we're looking at 2 days, 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 2 days, 5 days, 4 days, 5 days, 3 days. Well, this thing is not going long. And like my friend AJ Barker says, people don't have the cojones. They don't have the cultural, political stamina, the demographical stamina. They have too much amicability. They're too friendly to hold out, to pull in 12 angry men. We're going to be here for days on end with one guy giving them what's called in contract law, property law, the holdout problem. We don't have holdouts because people don't have balls anymore. And this is not just lay people. This is cardinal electors as well, which is why we get these negotiation candidates, which is why we get JP2s, which is why we get, I'm sad to say, even Benedict 16s, which is why I'm afraid we're not going to see a Cardinal Sarah become Pope, which is why we're not going to see a Cardinal Mueller become Pope, even though his theology is whack and German. But he was probably the loudest defender of Francis, the most doctrinally bulwarked critic of Francis is Cardinal Burke. We're not going to see a Cardinal Burke turn Pope Burke either. I love Cardinal Burke, but I just don't know where the fight is in these guys. And I don't know what to expect.
Do you want to take some, maybe some live Q&A, ask me anything while we're waiting for super chats?
Super chats. I'm still, Michael Knowles is still, and I told him his name should be Pope MK Ultra the First.
Is he writing it right now?
Yeah, he just laughed virtually.
He gave you a virtual LOL.
Yeah. So, I mean, are we still black smokeless?
We are still black smokeless. People are asking, what time was it supposed to be? Do they have set times? Yeah,
we were thinking an hour, 8 minutes ago. They like to push it back. These cardinals are drama queens, remember. Drama kings in the case of a few of them, but mainly drama queens. No peaks at the Cardinals, who are going to be so what they're going to be doing is they're going to be traveling to Castel San Angelo, just a little bit north along the Tiber. They're just going to go probably about half a mile north from where they're holed up at in St. Peter's. They're going to stay west of the Tiber. They're going to stay in the Vatican side of things for the night at Castel San Angelo. We've been in there. Okay. Oh, so Knowles responded. He said,
Let's have it, MK Ultra.
Here's what Pope MK Ultra the First would do. Outlaw extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, arrest the ones who don't comply, execute the ones in Birkenstocks. Okay, thank you, Michael. That's what we expected. I just read this out loud.
Birkenstocks. So we could go on for a whole hour on that. Yeah. How and why? I lived in Germany and in the 80s? In the 80s. And I still found those just awful. In Germany. And we have Americans today in full-blown Birkenstocks.
Yeah.
Super chat question.
Why in Anne Frank's diary did Birkenstocks come back? Why in the not so holy Sanhedrin, Holy Roman Empire? Why in the Holy Roman Empire did Birks come back? What the sweet shit, bro.
Okay, so super chat question. Thank you, David. So we'll take all super chat questions right now for Ask Me Anything. How could a pope bring the Eastern Orthodox back to the church?
So what a pope needs to do is say, American Catholics who are loud and are constantly over the last 25 years in this perverse dialogue with Protestants, and they brought in a lot of Protestants, but they need to shift from Protestant apologetics, do we worship Mary? That's all Catholic Answers has done for 25 years at this point. Do we worship Mary and the saints? To a robust dialogue with our best minds. I'm going on Tim Pool to do this in next month, to talk about, let's prove the historical brute fact of the pontificate. We had, within the first 4 pontificates, we had basically 2 exercises of universal jurisdiction. We have the 200 Syrian scholars who were Eastern Orthodox, basically saying we need a pope to decide. We have Solovyov and tons of others saying, without Papa, the brothers at the table, the bishops, cannot ever really get called to dinner. Or something like that. That's a bad translation. We have tons and tons of just historically brute fact refutation of the historical reality of the Pope, meaning the Pope is real. Once you prove the Pope, all the other stuff goes away. Mm-hmm. The Filioque, I think there's ultimately a strong case, but even Pope Gregory I forget who it was.
Oh, I thought you were doing like an African dialect thing.
Oh, no. First African Pope with clicks.
Pope Gregory.
No, I think it's Gregory I forget who, 11th or 12th, said that Filioque was politically catastrophic. And I agree. There's a case for either side of Filioque. It's not a dogmatic issue. We don't need Filioque proven. Did you guys know Charlemagne? Did you know Charlemagne is technically the one that made the change to the Filioque? I mean, he's Holy Roman Emperor. It's theologically defensible, but we do not need to be in schism with the Eastern Orthodox. If I were Pope, I would just say, look, let's just prove the historical reality of the papacy. Mm-hmm. The church has a head, has a visible sign of unity, and did so as early as the second Pope, the fourth Pope. We need to talk about the first Clement. We need to go through the reasons that they should join us, because we want those EOs. Yeah, we want Protestants, but we want those EOs back. They're good dudes. And
manly dudes.
Yeah, I don't even just mean on the patriarchy stuff. I just mean we need the EOs back, and I would put more capital into proving, not that you have to, not like letting them set frame, but just show everyone the pontificate is fundamental to Christianity. You can't have Christianity without a visible sign of unity, which has always been, since days immemorial, the holy sovereign pontiff, Pontifex Maximus.
Other super chat, again, pepper us with these. Tim will do an Ask Me Anything segment with super chats right now while we're waiting. So let me put this one on here.
Pontifex Maximus, by the way, means like a bridge between heaven and earth. It's a term originally used by Constantine. And we liked it so much, we're like, well, that's pagan, but we're going to take it. We're going to domesticate it. We're going to Christianize it. And the Pope, whereas the Roman Emperor is not a bridge between heaven and earth, the Pope actually is. That's where we get Pontifex Maximus from.
We'll take these
little
in
Conclave
order.
Day trivia.
Just a comment. This person says, I tell people I'm trad adjacent because I'm not smart enough to do good theology and my Latin is non-existent. But I love this channel. Pray for me, Dan Stump. Thank you, Dan, very much. Let's see here. We have a super chat. JD says Pope Ignatius. He's hoping for a Pope Ignatius. Oh, here we go. You'll love this one. Who do you got in the Nuggets Thunder series? Jokic, is it Jokic? Jokic is gonna get. But he says Jokic be snubbed of another MVP.
He is. He should have four. Should have his fourth. But the black white politics are going to give it to SGA. That's a hard one to call. They stole the first one in OKC the other night. Russ's ninth return to OKC. That was a great game. OKC looks beatable. I still think OKC is minus 150 or something betting odds. Sorry, I like sports gambling. But I hope Thunder can pull it off. I'm sorry, I hope Nuggets can pull it off because I'm a big Russ backer. The Warriors in that series are going to be without Steph Curry, it looks like, for at least games 2 and 3. I know only like 6 people in an entire audience of 2,000 plus watching live care about that.
Yeah, they're going to get a lot of sports ball comments.
Well, all the nerds will call it sports ball. But the point is, Steph Curry, great. This just came out when I was talking to George. I was looking at the Steph Curry MRI. And
while you were live?
Great. Yeah, right now. Grade 1. Grade 1 hamstring strain. That's not that bad, but it's going to take a week. That'll be 2 games. So thank goodness they stole that first one there in Minneapolis last night.
Okay, so next super chat. Don't know if you saw, but CNN ran a hit piece on you and the show yesterday. If nothing else, it's free advertising. God bless. That was on Anderson 360, right? The clip we just played. Yeah.
Well, how could I have missed it? They were interviewing me, bro. Don't know if you know, but they were asking you questions to which you were responding. Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for that. They came to my home. I allowed them in the door, and they asked me questions for 90 minutes.
People were asking if you were worried about getting doxxed with a show of like the exterior of the house. Like you've got things well under hand, guys. This is why we moved to Mississippi, by the way.
Right.
Like
they don't put up with that kind of shit here.
You come down here and start pulling like a protest in front of somebody's house, and
you're liable
good
to
luck.
No, they don't F around here. So
okay,
that's why we came here, bro.
Let's see. Jody I'm sorry if I'm saying your last name wrong. Carithers says, I heard that this evening's vote was optional. Is that not true?
Yes, the first scrutiny is always optional by holy tradition. Has been for I think 1,000 years. The conclave system's not that old. The first day's vote is not necessary. They have done it for each of at least the last 11 conclaves going back to 1878, which I looked into. But you don't need to do a first day vote. So that we might be waiting for nothing, but I think they'll do it. It's correct, though. It is an optional first day vote. And then they do 2 votes each morning following thereafter and 2 votes each afternoon. So usually it's 1 vote, then you get up to the 5th vote by the end of the 2nd day, the end of the 9th vote by the other 3rd day. And like I said, over the last 11 conclaves, only 1, 2, 3 times, 3 times out of 11 did we even get over 9 votes, which are represented by 2.25 days.
I was surprised how quickly everything was last few conclaves. I did not know that. Like, somebody asked us this question, I think about a week ago on live chat. And if I were to guess at that point, I was like, oh no, like, but 5 days, but like 2-3 days. What did our graphic say? It was like 2.3 days is the average for the last 10 conclaves.
3 days in 1878, 5 in 1903, 4 in 1914, 5 in 1922, 2 days in 39, 4 days in 58, 3 days in 63, 2 days in the first 1978 conclave, which gave us JP1, 3 days in the second 1978 conclave, over a month later, barely, which gave us JP2, 2 days in 05 and 2 days in 2013. These guys, they're well fed. They home for dinner. Rule in a street fight. Gary Scott, home for dinner. They want to get home for dinner. They don't want to stay the night in Castel San Angelo, even though it's a castle.
Right. Still looking, waiting.
So no smoke still.
Nope. Just lots of gulls. Lots of seagulls have flown into the live view. And
do they stay in Casa Santa Marta or do they stay in Castel San Angelo?
I thought it was because Castel San Angelo is right next to there. I thought that's where it was.
No, Casa Santa Marta is closer.
Oh, really? Look it up.
Yeah.
Google.
Where do they?
Google.
Poem. Yeah, let me see. That might be right. That's I'm being reminded. That's why comments are good.
People are saying that the seagulls are fed bots. So if we see the seagulls there, they are the bots, the feds.
As of yesterday, by the way, May 6th, late yesterday, Conclave, New York Post said there's still one clear contender leading the pack, and it's still Parolin, which is weird. Where do cardinal electors stay at night during conclave? Yeah, because I was surprised as I was repeating that info that Castel San Angelo is a bit far away. No, they stay at Domus Sancta Marta.
Ah.
Yeah, this is where Francis famously passed out after the dubia were submitted, and they thought he was dead for 11 minutes. He was so mad. He's such a rage-filled man, Pope Francis, that he passed out and he said, "I'll have the red hats." He was talking about, of course, the four dubia brothers. The late great Joachim Meisner, the German dubia cardinal. My I think favorite, the avuncular Italian cardinal. I just had his name. What was his name? Carlo Cafara. Very supposed to be just a warm man. Then together with Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Brandmuller, the two surviving dubia cardinal, who were never answered by Pope Francis. After he received that, they're having dinner at Domus Sancta Marta, and he passed out angry. So that is where they stay. So sorry, I was wrong. It's not Castel San Angelo. That's where something happens there.
So many things.
It's a 5-story building with 131 bedrooms, a dining room, and sitting room. So they're eating pretty well. That's a creepy picture with a weird triangle.
Somebody in chat
thank you,
good
Greg,
tip.
for the tip. Yeah.
Somebody in chat gave a good tip as well. They said, FYI, when we first see the smoke appear, it will be gray for the first 20 seconds. So I think they're saying that a lot of people will think it's white when it actually is gray, and then it goes to black. Because
of the chemical sweetener or whatever they use. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, it's Domus Sancta Marta, not Castel San Angelo. I said that a lot of times.
Somebody said, do you think it's taking longer because there are more cardinals?
Yeah, that's what George was reporting, that 133, which is over the 120 that they're supposed to use. This, I guess that could make it take longer. George Farmer certainly thought so. We had him on our live feed the first 40 minutes of today's show. I don't know. They like to be operatic. They like to be melodramatic. They like to keep us waiting. They know we're all out here, and it's not even a guaranteed thing. Like someone pointed out in chat that we get a vote tonight. I strongly bet on it.
So you don't think that so this might be, we might just be sitting here for nothing.
We might just be sitting here around talking
Thanks
trash.
a lot.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yikes. Watch right when we end live stream, watch it go like white smoke.
Well, I know that
will happen to us.
I don't want to. They're not usually this late. This is like an hour 23 late.
Somebody's asking, will Patrick Coffin accept this pope? I don't know. Let's text him and ask him.
Yeah, that's true. I'll text him
and ask him right now.
People asking if I'll get some passive aggressive Pat reply.
This live stream will just evolve into you texting all of your friends.
Yeah.
For people in chat, like just, hey, do you want to ask somebody a question? Like ask Michael Nolan.
No, let me, because I've just been screwing around. Let's get serious again. The reason that this book is so important, even just the first chapter, this book can be read in about an hour and a half, depending on your reading speed. I've been rereading it. It's so important, and it shows how determinate the results of these conclaves are from the outset. From the 2005 conclave, they'd been scheming on Bergoglio for 5 to 9 years. Initially, from 1996 to about 98, 99, they're like, our candidate will be Cardinal Martini, the leader, the dawn of the St. Gallen Mafia. And they already had an agenda that was all set. He came down with Parkinson's like JP2. He hated JP2, but he came down with Parkinson's like it. And then Cardinal Achille Silvestrini kind of took over for him. And he's the primate of Jerusalem. And he was like, we need to go with this Bergoglio guy. And for about 6 years, they schemed to get Bergoglio, and they nearly pulled it off in 2005. Between the third and fourth scrutiny, there's some odd lunchtime conversation. Walking arm in arm were Cardinal Martini and Cardinal Ratzinger. And then right after that, there seemed to be some deal made, Julia Maloney reports. And after that, all of the Gallen group's votes transferred to Bergoglio. They made some deal. Was it, hey, you'll hold office for a little less than a decade, and then you'll give it to Bergoglio? Because that's what basically happened. You have to understand that all these people that are sitting around going, oh, I hope it's Pizzaballa, I hope it's Cardinal Sarah. It's foolish. Like George said when we had him on, they follow no rules at all, the progressives, and we, the faithful, we, the traditionalists, we, the right-wingers, follow all the rules. And that is simply a stacked deck. It's an unfair game. It's a pig in a poke. So, yes, pardon my you guys aren't used to me being cynical, but it comes across as cynicism because all these new people of the church that don't even understand that the conclave's modernists are those who operate outside the rules. And yes, there's latae sententiae excommunications planned for them. But look, even the conservatives make fun of me when I'm like, well, Austin Ivory admitted that Cardinal Murphy O'Connor, his boss, and all of the other Gallen group guys should be latae sententiae excommunicated. And then they go, which means the sentence carries itself out. They go, well, that doesn't really count. So they walk between the raindrops. So conservatives at one point, it's like that LeBron James cycle that, LeBron says he doesn't have teammates. Then he drafts a bunch of people there. They eventually lose. And then they just go back to saying his backers just go back to saying LeBron had no support from teammates. Then he gets more super teams.
Your sports losing. Ball guys are going to be like, whoo.
They hate it. But that's how the Pope splainers are, man. They literally, they laugh at you when you're like, look, there's a lavender mafia called the Gallen Group. It's also called the German Synodal Way. It's just called the muscular faction. They operate outside the rules. They never get punished. And so they run the boards. They run the boards because they're essentially allowed to run outside of the boundary lines, while the good guys follow the boundary lines, follow the rules, and are thereby delimited. And they always win, at least in the modern church. Leo XIII said so in 1878. He was saying, look, the modernists are running the church. Pius X said so. Remember when he published Pascendi? All of the popes, all the good guys of the 20th century said we got infiltrated. Remember the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita? That's from like Gregory the 16th's Cardinal Secretary of State found that in the middle of the 19th century. It might have been as far back as Pius IX, who first intercepted it. It's hard to tell who exactly intercepted the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita, where they said next century, we are going to flood the cardinalate with Masons, whatever you want to call them. I don't want to get the YouTube channel banned, but you can call them what you want to call them. And they're going to operate outside the rules and get who they want. So when people are like, oh, I hope it's Cardinal, is it going to be Cardinal Sarah or Burke? I'm sorry to sound like a cynic, but it's not going to be a good guy.
It's funny because I had a dream that night. I remember I told you, I was like 2 days ago, I was like, I had a dream it was Cardinal Sarah and he picked the name Clement.
Yes.
That's never going to happen. I woke up, like sometimes you get nightmares and you wake up and you're relieved, but you're like, oh, it wasn't just a nightmare.
Yeah.
I woke up and I was disappointed because I knew, I was like, this is not going to happen.
Which is funny that you thought that seems like a name that would be picked, not only for a couple of the really good Clement popes, but because it so describes the temperament, the quiescent temperament of Cardinal Sarah. Such a good man. He'd be my choice, even though he's a little bit less strident doctrinally than Cardinal Burke, because we need a spiritual master. He is a spiritual master, and that was evident to me in his book, God or Nothing. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. He says poverty is good. Mm-hmm. We don't need what's the word for that? Extreme poverty. That's bad. We don't need people eating dust, but we want more poverty in the world. Beautiful.
People are asking you to hold up the Gonlin Mafia book.
Here.
Julie Maloney she's a great researcher. She did a really, really thorough job.
It's just a short little book packed with excellent research, much more research than Taylor and me did when we sort of popularized the Gonlin Mafia. She just did tons more research, and she's a Yale-trained writer. Her prose is excellent. It's just such a fast little read. You could read this between now and the end of the Conclave. Don't go buy it though, because it's 10 books. If you have it already, then you dig it out and read it. It's such a good book. I've been reading it at night, falling asleep. It's just you can finish the whole thing in like 90 minutes.
Speaking of books,
it will red pill you.
Somebody just now did a super chat reading Steph's book now. Tremendous thus far. Thank you very much, JD. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, righty.
We're at that point in the show when the show goes long and I have like a coffee or water. Trying to drink more water, and I go to take a sip and it's been gone for the last like 5 sips, and I keep forgetting because we'll usually go over an hour, but we want to get to black smoke. Black smoke matters.
Somebody said, just came here from EWTN stream. Host was saying the church needs to make annulment more straightforward.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it does need to make annulment more straightforward, a la pre-1968 rules on annulment. Just needs to be basically impossible. It needs to stand for, someone at a bona fide shotgun wedding. Mm-hmm. Basically, that's the only way you get an annulment. There were like 350 annulments in all the world before the 1970-71 USCCB changed their guidelines and then eventually got those globalized, which went to, in the 90s, it was like 70,000 in America alone. Annulments granted. It's basically Catholic divorce. So who was the EWTN host that's saying?
I don't know. Tell us in chat if you have more information on that. Again, Tim can take super chats for an Ask Me Anything session while we are waiting for smoke.
I'm seeing, Pat has not answered whether or not he will accept the next pope. I'm trying to find out if maybe Ed Moz. I think Ed Moz would answer. I mean, I know Ed.
Ask Ed. What would Ed say?
Yeah, he's given good answers. He's the one that came to me with the dual conclaves of 1130 thing. Mm-hmm. I think there are ways that he could characterize this pope as pope, but I agree with some of what they're saying. Mm-hmm. I was trying to get a little insider scoop from Diane Montagna.
Did she write in chat?
No, she's busy.
I would imagine.
I wonder where George is. I'm trying to see what we have there. There's like no news. I'm on Twitter. Everyone's just waiting.
Let me see. I can put some things on Twitter for you to respond to while we're waiting. Again, in chat, tell me if there's any smoke news, and I'll go back over to that view. Let's see here. Okay, so here we have some of the cardinals swearing the conclave oath. Tim, do you know much about that? I actually didn't know about this. So here, let's play this. Yeah. This has happened earlier before they got sealed into the Sistine Chapel. So here they are. I'll play that.
Et ego Claudius Cardinalis Cugerotti, spondeo voveo acuro. Sic me Deus adiuvet, et ex sancta Dei Evangelia, que manum mea tango.
et ego Victor Emmanuel Cardinalis Fernandez, spondeo boveo ac iuro, sic me Deus adjuvet, et ex Santa Dei Evangelia, quae manum mea tango.
You can tell which ones are really better versed in Latin and not.
Latin always sounds really bad when spoken by an Italian.
That's true.
I like Latin.
Yeah, that is actually kind of true.
From a Germanic or Anglo tongue, sounds much better. Yeah, it's ancient. You know, they're not allowed to form any pacts. This is formalized in Universi Dominici Gregis, paragraph 81. But it had already been formalized that they're not supposed to be forming voting blocks before conclave.
It's funny, yeah.
It's supposed to be a caucus type of event where they shutter the windows. You know, what 1787 in Philadelphia was supposed to be if they weren't cheating there as well when they drafted the new Constitution. It's supposed to be a caucus thing. Well, let's make a case for Cardinal so-and-so. I like Cardinal B, you like Cardinal C. Who should we go with? And the conservatives generally follow this. I never got a response to my letter to Cardinal Burke. Not surprising. We never got follow-up on what the pre-conclave meeting outside Cardinal Burke's apartment was oriented toward, of course. And we might not find out what the real meaning in some ecclesiological, anagogical way of the Francis pontificate for many years. Remember, the Avignon papacy people lasted 70 years, and they didn't really know who's pope during all of the life of like Vincent Ferrers, and tons of saints actually died and were eventually beatified and canonized, not knowing who the right pope was, some of them even calling the wrong guy pope. So the way anti-popes are announced, I know normies have no clue about this, but some saints have even been died calling the wrong guy an anti-pope, that is, pope.
That's interesting.
And even the Annuario is not perfectly clear about, say, famous Honorius. You know, what really was he a material heretic or a formal heretic? The Annuario is not as clear as you would think. We do have a count, as of today, 266 popes in this Sede Vacante period, but it's not as clear about some of them, and we don't have an exact number. Is it 30 anti-popes we've had, 35, 36? There are some that are question marks, and that's unsatisfying. So I would call everyone to have a look at, you know, let's be conservative, 30 anti-popes over 2 millennia. That's 1.5 per century on
Tim,
average.
what exactly is an anti-pope, and are they declared that during their pontificate or after?
No, they're declared only ex post. Anti-popes are papal pretenders that many folks within Christendom mistook for pope during their life. You don't get called anti-pope if you're just like Pope Michael or whatever. To use a funny example, a significant portion of Christendom had to have mistaken them for the pope sitting in Rome or for 70 years in France, in Avignon. To set off the Great Western Schism, in order to be called anti-pope. If your sweet old Uncle Remus thinks he's pope, he doesn't get declared an anti-pope. You're only an anti-pope if a significant portion of the world's Catholics mistook you for pope. Think of that Avignon papacy as a famous example. At one point, we had 3 pretenders to the throne of Peter. So they're only declared afterwards, and the action is retroactive action that depopes you. Another example is during the conclave of 1130, which elected, there's a mini conclave that elected the guy that would end up being called Pope Innocent II. But for the next 8 or 9 years, a converso Jew pope named Anacletus II was actually the one at the conclave that followed all of the rules of canon, and was the Pope sitting in Rome for 8 or 9 years until later retroaction by the church, specifically at the Second Lateran Council, said, nope, the Pope this whole time, even though he wasn't sitting in Rome for 8.5 years, was Innocent II. And he was elected at a very non-canonical mini conclave, this like a few days before Anacletus II who was later ruled anti-pope was. But by all measures, everyone thought Anacletus II was pope.
This was the Conclave of 1130?
Yeah, the dual conclaves. And they were even breaking rules to give us Innocent II. What you guys have to understand, I hate to sound like as a jurisprude, a judicial realist, but that's what the church is. If they decide later, hey, we didn't want this Jew pope guy, because that's bad news, we're going to go with even the uncanonical Innocent II.
That was a direct quote.
Yeah.
That's what they said. That was them on the record.
George just got back to me. I was like, any news whatsoever? He said nothing.
Yeah,
so
they're all just waiting.
We're still waiting. So the point is, strange things do happen. People say nothing interesting ever happens. Were you alive from like 2020 to 2023? Things do happen that are interesting. Anti-popes do happen. Bergoglio, Francis, I call him Francis because I'm not one of these guys that like pretends I know better than the cardinals. I understand the contingent nature of a composite institution, a church institution composed of deific and anthropogenic components, human and man. The power of binding and loosing left by Christ to the apostles, the keys to Peter, and the binding loosing power to the apostles means that it's Schrodinger's papacy. If the cardinals get the cojones to marshal the evidence against Francis, and there's tons of it, that he was an anti-pope, then you lift that box and you find, oh, he wasn't an anti-pope. He was an anti-pope. He wasn't actually pope. But if they don't have the cojones, which is lacking in the modern church, to marshal the existent evidence, which is bountiful, then Francis was pope, and in an anti-pope he was not. So it's Schrodinger's papacy. The evidence is bountiful, but this is where I part ways with my friends like Pat Coffin or Ed Mazza, or I don't know her, but someone like Ann Barnhart. It's a Schrodinger's cat situation where, yes, I know the evidence is really strong against Francis, and I know the evidence is really strong that Obama, Clinton, Podesta's forced Benedict to leave. You know, I'm a Quarto Secreto kind of guy. I'm a Benedict's secret kind of guy. The books put out by my favorite Vaticanista, the author of The Fourth Secret. What's his name? Would you look that up?
Sochi? Is it Sochi?
Antonio Sochi. Thank you. Yeah, a former BFF of Cardinal Bertone. But unless the cardinals get together and have some sort of post-conclave or some sort of ecumenical council to address the issue, then Francis was pope by a kind of, even if Benedict resigned improperly, it's cured by universal peaceful acceptance. There's a kind of supplied jurisdiction afforded by both positive law and divine law. And you can overcome that, like we said about the Jew papacy of Anacletus II. The church just didn't want that pockmark on its record.
Somebody in chat was asking about that. He said, Jerry says, how is him being Jewish have anything to do with him being an anti-pope?
That's the point, man, is that there was a dual conclave in AD 1130. The presumptive winner, even the one that was a more canonical conclave, was Anacletus II, but the later church decided, for whatever reason, we don't really want this guy on our record, and so they can look. They can't create an existent pope, anti-pope situation out of nothing. But if there was some other papal pretender, there was Innocent II at some other conclave, then they're going to point at that, even though that was the one that didn't seem to follow the canonical procedure. The church can do what it wants later. It can't do whatever it wants. But that's what I'm saying. Let's pretend, hypothetically, thought experiment now, game it out with me, that meeting of presumptive good guys outside of the apartment of Cardinal Burke did just do a little straw poll. What would we say? Let's pretend it was the JP2 and Benedict 16 cardinals without all the many Francis cardinals. 26, there are only 26 voting age JP2 and B16 cardinals, minus the, 100 and some odd Francis made cardinals, 120 something. If Francis wasn't a valid pope, then you need to declare it with only the cardinals made by JP2 and Benedict 16. So let's say they took a straw poll at Burke's apartment there. And let's say they took a second straw poll and they go, okay, so Francis was never Pope. Those cardinals he made were never supplied jurisdiction. So who would we vote for the current Pope? And they could back end that. The church could later through some council, or depending on whether you ask Suarez or you ask other church fathers, Francis Xavier, there are several theological opinions on how you would do this, but the church would and could do it later. It's all through retroactivity, which is a legal fiction. So it doesn't quite make sense to the mind. You have to think fourth dimensionally, as Doc tells Marty.
Luke Williams in chat challenged that. He's saying, what Tim is saying only works when the see is vacant and not occupied. What he is suggesting could only work for Francis since Benedict's death, technically.
No, because that's not true. Because it works, yes, and what they would do through retroactivity, most likely, none of us exactly knows, my friend. But what they would most likely do is say, well, this is cleaner. Once you establish that Francis violated UDG 81 together with the Gallen group at the really the last two conclaves, then you would just say, oh, well, now let's look at Francis's supposedly invalid abdication, resignation, and there are problems with it. And now they say, okay, so we're going to keep the Benedict pontificate going until when did he die? December 31st of 2023, like less than a year and a half ago. Okay, that's cleaner. So then the sede vacante period began. This is all retroactive, though. It's all retroactively set, and the church has done this many times. So Benedict was Pope from April of 2005 all the way until 2023, December 31. Almost 20-year pontificate, even though we were assuming it was only 8 years. There was no Francis I. He was an anti-pope. This is the thought experiment. And therefore, it cleans things up. Then you look at history, and there was only a year and a half sede vacante interregnum period. You see? But they make that all up. They're cleaning up the history books as they go. And there's a reasonable basis for doing it. And the church does whatever it wants with popes and anti-popes. Canon law is always trumped by natural law. That's what the legal muggles out there don't understand. So yes, it does work. I'm not saying this is how it will work out. I'm just saying, man, you got to study the anti-popes. You got to look at the way this has happened over 30 times. They clean it up. And even then, like I say, the annuario is not perfectly clear. We still don't have a clear answer on what exactly Honorius was. Go look at the cadaver synod, man. They cleaned stuff up after the fact.
They dug him up.
Dig up his bones.
Yeah, they were like, that is like, we've joked many times, so that is like the height of pettiness. Like when you accuse somebody, like dig up his bones and put his bones on trial. It wasn't enough just to accuse him after death. They're like, no, we need the corpse there. Get that corpse and put him up there so we can accuse him. It's like, imagine what the Francis Vatican did to Cardinal Pell's body, broke his nose, beat up the body. This is really thugs. They didn't do this out in the light. They cast their stone in the dark and then hid their hand, right? But we do know that the nose of Cardinal Pell was broken because they hated him. He was running the check on the Banco Ambrosiano. He was the one that was in the hot seat because he was essentially auditing the Pope Francis pontificate. And they didn't like it. And when you cross the Sankt Gallen Mafia and the Sankt Gallen Pope, they will defile your corpse. That's not what we're saying to do. No, it's get
no
on
joke.
Your corpse handling gloves.
Oh my gosh. Holy cow. It gets so raw when we're waiting for black smoke. But seriously, they can do this out in the public like they did at the Cadaver Synod. The point is, normies just can't wrap their head around it.
No.
This is how the church has operated for 2,000 years. They clean it up later, kind of like an annulment. And if there's a real case for it, then it's not just a legal fiction. It's real. Just the people that lived through the 69 years of the Avignon papacy. There are literally 2 French pretenders to the throne. and one Roman. And people did not know. Pat Coffin responded with, "LOL, people are so funny." I'm literally just asking, though, bro.
People want to know, Pat.
Will you accept this pope?
Demand an answer.
The people want to know. So I don't know. Are we ever going to get black smoke? We've talked about everything we could possibly talk about. How long have we been going?
It's only been 2 hours.
It's only been 2 hours.
It's only been 4.5 days. From a guy. Okay. Do you disagree? Elect Cardinal Burke and do what Mary says. I think it's that simple.
Of course, I agree. But I'm just saying they won't do that. That's like saying, do you agree President Trump should stop being a feminist, Zionist old boomer and do everything we want him to do and convert to Catholicism and make his wife be a real Catholic, not a pro-abortion Catholic, and, kick out all the illegal immigrants.
And the women in his administration.
And beat the shit out of all the losers in our midst. Whatever. Yeah, of course. I love that. Is that going to happen? Nay. Just because we're Catholics, that doesn't mean we can just sidestep power politics. Mm-hmm. There's still the way of the world. Even Jesus said, "Be wise as serpents and gentle as doves." It's Fuentes' point that you can't just be a nerd Catholic and be like, "Well, this is what I would do, so that's what's going to happen." Look, I read that Ed Penton article too. I love it, where it was like, these are the 10 things the next pope needs to do. I 100% agree. That's not what the next pope's going to do. The next pope's going to do the next 10 things that Francis was going to do, because the Gallon Group appoints these guys at this point.
Mr. White on Twitter says, what do you want in a pope?
Abolish the Novus Ordo. We can't be biritualistic, as Francis always said. Universalize the Latin Mass. This is very unpopular, but I don't even like the 21 negotiation Eastern rites. I don't even like that. Make it truly lowercase c Catholic. And I know people always go monkey clumps when you say that, but I don't like the non-Catholicity, even though that it's historically valid, of having all the other rites. Do you guys know? I didn't even know till I went to Rome that there are like 22 rites in the church. The Latin rites like 99% of the liturgies, but there are 21 other rites, and this renders all the more absurd the fact that we can't just have unfettered access to the TLM. It's like, okay, that's fine. Make the Novus Ordo some new, the 23rd rite. This is the gay North American rite for homos and boomers, and just keep the Roman rite just the TLM. If you're gonna take these other rites, do you know where most of the Eastern rites came from? Do you know? Steph?
No, I have no idea.
They came from, and I don't think this is actually that lame. I think it's kind of cool. They came from compromises made with different schismatic sects at different points, like the Great Schism, the Great Western Schism, when we were having, the Maronite rite, the Coptic rite, the Ukrainian rite, the Russian rite, the Greek rite, the Byzantine rite. All of these were like, hey, literally what the church said. You can go check my history on this. They said, you guys can keep, okay, if the Greek Orthodox are leaving the church, the Ukrainian Orthodox are leaving the church, the Russian Orthodox are leaving the church, Coptics are leaving, whoever, Maronites are leaving the church. If you guys stay Catholic and you say the name of the Pope in your liturgy, that's all you have to do. One, you can keep the same liturgy that you would have if you were Ukrainian Orthodox. You're just Ukrainian Catholic. You could be Maronite or whatever it is, Coptic Orthodox, same liturgy, but it's Coptic Catholic. You could keep your liturgy, and they got that as a kind of desiderat, as a kind of consideration. And also regarding that troublesome filioque question, they don't even have to read it during Mass. Like, you have to believe it, but you don't have to prove you believe it, because you don't have to say it when you say the creed in Mass. Can you believe that? That's a sweet deal. And the popes at various times who made these deals with would-be schismatics who would be leaving to the East, they acted shrewdly, I think. They acted shrewdly. They said, look, you have to believe it, but you don't have to prove you believe the Catholic version of the filioque. You do have to read the Pope's name during the liturgy, but you can keep your own liturgy. So I do like, this is a long answer to a short question. I do like the dimension of, in order to get a bunch of the orthos back Catholic, all we would have to do is resolve the papal question, because as long as we keep those negotiation rights in the church, all those Eastern rights that are the Catholic version of the Orthodox rights, then they could keep doing exactly what they're doing. They could keep their calendars. They could keep their version of the breviary. They could keep all that stuff, celebrating Easter on like a weird day, a week too soon or a week after, the way the contrarian Orthodox do. You could keep that whole calendar and you could keep your Mass. All you have to do is, you don't even have to say the Filioque, but you just have to say the Pope's name.
People are asking again why you think there's such a delay with the smoke. Again, they don't have to. I didn't know this. They don't have to actually do a first vote on the first day.
I think they will, though. George is just saying my prediction of a long vote was accurate. We're texting here. I said, absolutely. There's a lot of electors now. There's more than there's supposed to be. Archbishop Vigano says that there are, this could invalidate the vote. I don't know if I agree. I'll have to look into it. What else I would do as Pope besides, universalize the TLM? Okay, let the Eastern rites stand. That was the long answer. But kick out all the homos, right? Literally bring back in the altars to all the churches. Has to be like a Peter's Pence project. You bring back in altars. Kick out all the Cranmer tables. Sorry, we're not Presbyterian. Sorry, you got to push the altar up against the wall. Obviously, we're back to TLM under Pope Timothy's reign, so there's no space between the table and the wall. So we're obviously doing TLM. We're obviously doing no more versus populum. It's all ad orientem. I could go through Ed Penton's list. Doubles for me nicely. I would consider reducing the amount of Oriental liturgical rites.
What name would you pick, Tim? What would you be?
I'd probably go Pio Tredici. I'd probably be Pius the 13th. But there are other names that could be explored that aren't quite so well known. Then I would have my Pius the 12th clock. My 12 Piuses clock would no longer be so nifty.
Yeah, but that would be a good.
That would be a petty reason not to. I would.
Dude, bro, the first.
Yeah. What else? I mean, me and Taylor made a relatively good, pithy 7 or 8 item list back in the day. I would just say you have to make more of a push to justify the Petrine office to get some of the Eastern Orthodox. I would obviously cancel the Vatican-China deal day one. I would hold a Vatican III to clarify not only Vatican II, but Vatican I as well. Vatican I has its vagaries as well. Clarify those 3 worst constitutions of Vatican II. I wouldn't invalidate them. I would clarify them. I would destroy the spirit of Vatican II. I would get rid of all the suspect cardinals. I would publish JP1's list of Masonic what's it called? Insurgents. Mm-hmm. I would republish and recast every Catholic's attention to the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita. And I would say this is why we've had so many homo pedos in the office. They planned to do this. I would publish everything Bella Dodd ever wrote about what she was implanted to do. She installed 1,100 homos at Stalin's behest, kind of in concert with the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita. I would explain that that's why we've had such a problem with ephebophilia in the church. I would obviously move to investigate the 2005 and 2013 conclaves, and probably at my Vatican III, which would revisit the ambiguities of Vatican I and II, I would also revisit, which of the, post-conciliar popes were valid or invalid, along with probably Francis. I would try to get the sedes back, and I would do something to cover the conceptual spread, to cover the explanatory gap for why the church changed so much after 1958. I would do this. Why is Pius XII our last really, really Catholic pope? Now, I'm not a sede. I've never been a sede. But here's why they're the Pope. I know. Let me say this for all
What about
time.
the third secret too? People asking.
Oh, absolutely. 3B would be published forthwith.
The first thing.
Yeah,
You would carry
I
it
would
out
go
to the
through
balcony.
and I would show under the Vatican secret archives what the connection between Fatima secret 3B and Akita's secret is. I would try to clarify what that means. Keep your eyes on the skies. I would, as a matter of fact, let the SSPXers out there get this clear. I would clarify that that Lefebvre is now in good standing. I would say, well, SSPX chapels are in good standing. I would hope that FSSP and SSPX could kind of reconcile, and I would say I would grant them along with ICKSP personal prelature. Any of those groups would have personal prelature just for being good guys, but they wouldn't actually need it because the only Roman rite would be the TLM. Vatican III would do all that stuff.
Somebody said, would there be a Thomistic revival in the seminaries under a Pope Tim?
Of course. Remember at the Council of Trent, the book they placed up there on the altar at the same height as Scripture, maybe probably an inch lower, was the Summa. I think it was actually the Summa Contra Gentiles. I would say, Thomas, we have a universal doctor of the church. Oh, I'm sorry to say I would get rid of the 4 female doctors of the church. That's just a contradiction in terms.
They all came in after Vatican II.
Yep.
All 4 female doctors of the church were declared after Vatican II.
1970 to now, including Benedict, I think made 1 or 2 of them, of the 4 female doctors of the church. That a female doctor means teacher of theology is not a thing. I would try to reform parish life. I would try to reform parish schools in the West. I would emplace if I wanted to emplace positions of power from the periphery, I would make sure that they're the cardinals from, the First Family Synod who did a good job in Asia and Africa, saving us from Amoris Laetitia. I would say Amoris Laetitia is of no effect. I would clarify just what the hermeneutic of continuity means. People don't understand this, and hermeneutic is an interpretive aid. I would offer, for the first time ever, a compelling hermeneutic of continuity by revisiting Vatican II and even the document, the second lesser-known document of Vatican I that causes confusion. You have to rectify things. Reconcile. Something like Unum Sanctum, Vatican I, papal power in the world. You have to provide an interpretive aid. Now, when people think that a hermeneutic of continuity, when they draw that stupid picture of the horse, half cartoon, half real, is by itself silly. No, a hermeneutic of continuity means that some sort of good, holy, faithful traditionalist pope needs to say how the church is still the church. The trad idiots.
Oh, I think we have smoke. We have smoke.
Okay.
We have smoke. It looks like it's black. We have smoke.
Smoke. Okay. Shocker. It's black smoke.
Black.
This is what we waited for?
Black. There it is, everybody.
Can we see it? Can you maximize that?
I can't without you. Well, I can do it here.
I don't.
There it is. We have black smoke.
Okay. There
wow. Woo. Okay. 2:01 p.m. What time is that, Rome?
So it's 9:01 p.m.
Yikes.
Fully 2 hours after it was expected. I mean, it doesn't mean much. The big question is who, what Julia Maloney taught me, I was saying this with George Farmer when he was on, is who were the 2 or 3 big front runners. They clear away all the other names. I would kill to know. I wouldn't actually kill. I would really be curious to know who those 2 or 3 front runners are, because they clear away all the other names and then they just reshuffle votes by some sort of caucusing process over the course of the next day or days. Those 2 or 3 names, and they only go to other names if they get frozen out. Remember, there was a rule.
It's going. People are just cheering in the crowds, by the way. Just like you're giving us some great shots, Tim. I don't know if you want to see this real quick.
Yeah, sure. Just to witness history.
Just to witness history. By the way, this is this is a remarkable time in history because this was not happening that much with Benedict nor with Francis, right? We're not having like a bunch of live viewers, things like that. So this is
I was watching live.
Interesting.
I was working at Era Energy at an oil and gas company as a landman in 2013, and I didn't find live viewage. Now, what happened there was I was re-clicking Pontifex Wikipedia, and the Comunione et Liberazione candidate Angelo Scola, conservative Angelo Scola, was announced pope. And this is a well-known thing. And then he was unannounced pope. They think it might not have just been a clerical error. It could have been some Bergoglio.
I remember that. You came home and you said it was a different name. And I was like, no, it was the guy from Buenos Aires. And you're like, no.
No. I just heard that making a left into our neighborhood. I was listening to Jazz McKay's show, this redneck guy from Bakersfield, California, on AM radio. He didn't know who the hell any of these were, but he said it was a Jesuit. I think he'd been told that's sort of bad. It was a South American. It's actually an Italian national transplanted to South America named Bergoglio, a fully Italian name. And that was strange. So I found out 30 seconds before I got home at lunch that day. So no, you're right. We didn't have live coverage in even 2013.
Hey, will you talk about this? People in chat, some Protestants are like, what's the significance of this smoke? So we have, obviously, this is the first vote for the conclave. We have black smoke. The options are black and white smoke, and we're waiting for the color.
They apply a chemical solvent to all the names, the scrutinies, the ballots, which Raymond Arroyo showed what the ballots were. They put them all in a pot, they burn them, and they apply some sort of chemical solvent, which gives us white smoke when they've achieved the 2/3 requisite majority. That means, habemus papam, and it colors the smoke black when we do not have a pope. So we do not have a pope. That's what it means. Now, there was a rule put in place. This is a weird one by JP2, same document I keep citing to say that all of these bad guys, the Golan group, mafiosi, excommunicated themselves. I keep citing paragraph 81 of this. It's a 1996 text called Universi Dominici Gregis by John Paul II, which set some new procedures for electing popes. In previous conclaves, a candidate could accumulate enough votes to block another from reaching the 2/3 threshold, which you can do once again. But under the new rules set in 1996, supporters of one guy needed to hold out for just over 34 scrutiny. And that basically never happens. I've showed you that hasn't happened in 11 conclaves. But if you could hold out to 34, then the 2/3 requirement drops to a bare majority requirement. Now, Benedict XVI, interestingly, got rid of his predecessor's new rule. So it's back to you always need 2/3. It never will drop to a bare majority after 34 votes or ballots or scrutiny, whatever you want to call them. But it's, so they still need 2/3 even after 34 votes, but we're not going to get 34 votes at this point.
So this is
or shout out to classical theist who corrected me. It's like, no, Benedict changed that back, which I had heard. I just forgot.
Thank you, classical theist. Good account on Twitter. Go ahead and give him a follow. Get some live shots right now. The Vatican, obviously, nighttime there. St. Peter's Square, full of people. We've got our first vote in. Black smoke, meaning no pope. So, Tim, how many more rounds of this? Like, so tomorrow it starts again, and do we get
2 in the morning, 2 in the evening?
So we have 4 smokes to look for per day.
Yeah, 4 smokes to look for today. I think I'll be on Avoiding Babylon tonight. I think it was Anthony in the thing.
Sweet. Anthony was in earlier. People were just on the other thing. We're asking about the female doctors of the church. Somebody said, just trying to understand, why do you not want female doctors of the church, but your wife is so active on your program? People always think they got us on this one. By the way,
can't catch us out because women are not allowed to teach men. That's a scriptural principle. It's a pontifical principle. It's a magisterial principle. Women cannot teach men. The only thing they're allowed to teach in both the book of Timothy and the book of Titus is other women. They're allowed to teach younger women, hey, you need to be submissive to your husband. They're not allowed to teach men. So a doctor is a teacher, and we cannot have a canonical doctor set as a woman. And we have 4 since 1970. And that's because the church became almost unrecognizable starting with Vatican II. And besides that, we have lots of great doctors. Some of the defenders of the Eucharist, and my favorite guys in the church, Ambrose and Augustine, and St. Francis Xavier, and just so many amazing doctors of the church. But there's one clear head of all of them. He's called the angelic doctor, the universal doctor, other times the common doctor. He has so many titles because he is the smartest man ever to draw air into his lungs. And he is known as St. Thomas Aquinas, and he mogs everyone. So, but the point is, we have enough other guys that are maybe not a close second to Thomas, but equally good. And we just don't need female doctors because they are unchristian. It violates scripture.
And interestingly enough, somebody I was talking to was saying that I'm sure, because this is not to disrespect those holy women, because they are great saints. They're amazing saints, but holy women also know their place. And I would bet my life that if we were to talk to any one of those four, they would not want that honorific. Of
course, because they're the new Adam is Jesus, the new Eve is Mary, the ideal woman. She's the queen of heaven. Right? She's the queen of heaven, all of her beautiful titles, right? Like the Spike of Bethlehem, the Mystic Rose, the Holy Mother of God, Queen of Heaven, so many other beautiful titles. The best saint. Why is my confirmation saint not Mary? We have a clear best saint.
I know.
But she was a woman, and she never presumed to evangelize. She never went out when the apostles were sent out in the Great Commission in Matthew's Gospel. They're sent out 2 by 2 took place in Acts of the Apostles. Never a woman, because they cannot teach. They're not hardy. They can't be sent out on little skiffs all across the Mediterranean. Mary was greatest saint just because she is the Ark of the Covenant. That's it. She doesn't need anything else. She's already greater than Saint Joseph, who's probably the second greatest saint.
I think there's AP Press has a
religion news team, and I'm standing here at the Vatican where we have just seen the first black smoke. That means that the first round of voting in the conclave tonight did not reach the required 2/3 majority. So we do not have news of a pope tonight. The smoke that came out of the chimney set up on top of the Sistine Chapel was, again, black. That indicates that no choice was made. So what's going to happen right now is that the cardinals or electors are going to take a break. They will break for the night. It is past 9 p.m. Local time here in Rome. And then they will gather again in the Sistine Chapel, again behind closed doors, to restart the process tomorrow.
And Domus Santa Marta is where they sleep. So thank you to Greg, not Castel San Angelo. I knew that's too far. Yeah, brother Gregorius. That's too far away. It's like a mile and a half. They wouldn't have them practicing there. Yeah, Domus Santa Marta is right there. So yeah, dumb oversight there.
Interesting. Okay. So, somebody corrected us. I think we were incorrect. It was 4 votes, but only 2 smokes per day.
Yeah. No, that's what we said. That's
okay. I'm sorry.
There's only there's a lunch smoke and an end of the day smoke.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I might have said 4 smokes.
So. We said four scrutinies per day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't even think we said how many times they smoke out each day. What these cardinals are smoking. All right, let's break there. God bless you all. Pray. Remember Cardinal Burke's novena prayer. Here, I'll pray it right now in closing.
Yeah, let's
pray for these cardinals to elect a holy guy. I'm a bit skeptical. We all know this, but I'm still praying to be wrong. You can always pray to be wrong. Wow, I've been here over 2 hours. So Cardinal,
I thought we were going to be here like 4 hours. I was like lining up things to talk about.
Simply need a bathroom break. It's that simple. So, okay. So here's how we'll pray Cardinal Burke's Conclave Novena prayer. I think I missed the day of this, and this is supposed to be the 9th day today. I think I missed one, so I'll just go an extra day. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I kneel before you, O Virgin Mother of God, Our Lady of Guadalupe, the compassionate mother of all who love you, cry to you, seek you, trust in you. I plead for the church at a time of great trial and danger for her. As you came to the rescue of the church at Tepeyac in 1531, please intercede for the Sacred College of Cardinals gathered in Rome to elect the successor of St. Peter, Vicar of Christ, Shepherd of the Universal Church. At this tumultuous time for the church and for the world, plead with your divine Son that the cardinals of the Holy Roman Church, his mystical body, will humbly obey the promptings of the Holy Spirit. Through your intercession, may they choose the most worthy man to be Christ's vicar on earth. With you, I placed all my trust in him who alone is our help and salvation. Amen. Heart of Jesus, salvation of those who trust in thee. Have mercy on us. Our Lady of Guadalupe, Virgin Mother of God and divine Mother of divine grace, pray for us. And as always, we say, death through Eve, life through Mary. We say our prayers to Jesus through Mary. Mother of Victory, pray for us.
Are you going on with Anthony tonight? Do you know yet?
I think so.
Okay,
I should be on Avoiding Babylon tonight to just shoot the breeze. God bless you all. Have a great day. Pray that conclave prayer if you can. Say your beads tonight for a holy, holy Father.
Are we going in tomorrow as well?
Yeah, we'll be live tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be for the smoke or whatever, but we'll be doing news tomorrow. God bless. Decibel.